Ryan Cole thought he was just saving a stranger from the flames. He had no idea she was Isabella Grant, the billionaire CEO whose empire touched millions. When she returned 2 days later with armed security and a briefcase full of cash, he did something that shocked her more than the fire. He said no. What happened next would change both their lives forever, proving that sometimes the bravest act isn't running into danger. It's staying vulnerable enough to let someone in. Drop a comment with your city name so I can see how far this story travels. The night smelled like gasoline and fear. Ryan Cole's hands trembled as he gripped the steering wheel, the dashboard clock glowing an accusatory 11:47 p.m. He'd just finished a double shift at Martinez Auto Shop, his fingernails still black with engine grease, his back screaming from 14 hours bent over car hoods. The radio played some forgettable pop song, but he barely heard it. His mind was already home, imagining Liam asleep in his Iron Man pajamas, Mrs. Chen from next door probably dozing on the couch with her knitting needles still in her hands. Being a single dad meant living in a constant state of low-grade panic. Every minute away from his 8-year-old son felt like tempting fate. Every extra shift was necessary but terrifying. What if Liam woke up scared? What if there was an emergency? What if? Ryan turned onto Maple Street, his neighborhood of modest ranch houses and chain-link fences, and that's when he saw it. Orange light danced across the sky like some terrible aurora. Smoke billowed thick and black, visible even in the darkness, rising from somewhere near the intersection of Maple and 3rd. Ryan's foot instinctively pressed harder on the accelerator. His street. It was his street. "Please, not my house," he whispered, knuckles white. "Please, God, not my house." But as he rounded the corner, his prayer was answered in the worst possible way. It wasn't his house. It was the old Victorian 2 doors down, the one that had been under renovation for months, the one nobody lived in yet, except the flames consuming it said otherwise. Through the first-floor windows, fire raged like something alive and hungry. And standing in Ryan's yard, still in his Iron Man pajamas, was Liam. Ryan slammed the truck into park so hard it lurched forward. He was out before the engine stopped ticking, sprinting across the lawn. "Liam! Liam!" His son's face was streaked with tears, lit by the hellish glow. Mrs. Chen stood behind him, one hand on his shoulder, her phone pressed to her ear. Yes, the fire department. Maple Street, number 2847. Ryan dropped to his knees, hands frantically checking Liam for injuries. "Are you okay? Are you hurt? Dad!" Liam grabbed his father's shirt. "Dad, there's someone inside. I heard them screaming." Time stopped. Ryan's head snapped toward the burning Victorian. Other neighbors had gathered now, a dozen people standing at a safe distance, their faces flickering in the firelight. Some held phones up, recording. Nobody moved toward the house. "I called 911, said Tom Brennan from across the street, a retired postal worker who'd lived there 30 years. "They're coming. 5 minutes, they said." 5 minutes. Ryan stared at the inferno. The entire first floor was engulfed, flames licking out of broken windows, eating the old wooden siding like paper. Black smoke poured from the roof. The heat was intense even from 20 feet away. 5 minutes was forever when you were burning alive. "Did you hear that?" Mrs. Chen's voice cracked. "Did you hear someone scream?" Everyone stood frozen, the terrible calculus playing out in their silence. The house was gone. Anyone inside was probably already dead. Going in there was suicide. The fire department was coming. Let the professionals handle it. Ryan looked at his son. Liam's eyes were huge, terrified, reflecting flames. In that moment, Ryan saw every lesson he'd ever tried to teach crystallized in one choice. What kind of man do you want to be? What kind of father? "Stay with Mrs. Chen, Meg." Ryan's voice came out surprisingly steady. "Dad?" Liam's face went from fear to horror as he understood. "Dad, no!" "Stay with Mrs. Chen." Ryan pulled off his work jacket, already running toward the house. Behind him, voices erupted in protest. "Ryan, don't be crazy! The fire department is coming. You'll die in there." Maybe. Probably. But Ryan had made his decision in that split second between seeing his son's face and choosing what kind of man he'd die as, if it came to that. The heat hit him like a physical wall 10 feet from the porch. He wrapped his jacket around his head and lower face, leaving just his eyes exposed. The front door hung open, swinging slightly, as if inviting him to hell. Through the gap he could see the interior, a nightmare of orange and black, the wallpaper curling and burning, the old hardwood floor buckling. Someone screamed. It was real. Faint, choked, but real. Ryan took one last breath of cool night air and plunged into the fire. The world became instant, searing pain. The heat wasn't just hot, it was angry, aggressive, attacking every exposed inch of skin. His eyes watered immediately, tears evaporating almost as fast as they formed. The smoke was thick as tar, turning everything into a hellish fog. He couldn't see more than 3 feet in any direction. "Hello!" His shout was immediately swallowed by the roar of burning wood. "Can you hear me?" Another scream to his right. Ryan stumbled that direction, one arm held out, feeling his way through the smoke. His lungs already ached. How long had he been inside? 10 seconds? 20? It felt like an hour. His hand hit a wall. He followed it, bent low where the smoke was slightly thinner, where he could almost breathe. The heat was unbearable. He could feel his skin starting to blister. Through gaps in the smoke, he caught glimpses of destruction, furniture ablaze, curtains transformed into sheets of fire, family photos burning in their frames on walls that would soon collapse. Then he saw her. She was crumpled at the base of the stairs, maybe 15 feet away, as if she'd been trying to descend when the smoke overwhelmed her. A woman, 30s or 40s, dressed in what looked like business clothes now stained with soot. Her eyes were closed, her chest barely moving. Around her the fire advanced like a predator, flames crawling across the floor, eating through the banister, consuming everything. Ryan lurched toward her. "Hey! Hey!" She didn't respond. He grabbed her under the arms, trying to lift her. Dead weight. She was completely unconscious, her body limp and impossibly heavy. Ryan got her torso up, but his feet slipped on the scorched floor. They both went down hard. Come on, he gasped, lungs screaming for air that wasn't poison. "Stay with me." A section of the ceiling collapsed behind them, sending up a shower of embers and a blast of heat that felt like it would melt his face off. The front door, their escape route, was barely visible through the smoke, a rectangular suggestion of darkness slightly less dense than the burning hell around them. Ryan got his arms under her again, this time hooking under her armpits and dragging her backward. She was heavier than she looked, or maybe he was just that weak, oxygen-deprived and cooking alive. Each step backward was agony. His arms shook, his vision spotted with darkness at the edges. 5 feet from the door, the woman's hair caught fire. "No!" Ryan dropped her long enough to slap at her head with his jacket, smothering the flames. The smell of burnt hair mixed with everything else. He got his arms around her again, tears streaming down his face now, though whether from smoke or fear or pain he couldn't tell. 3 feet, 2 feet. He could see people outside now, shadows running around, yelling. Mrs. Chen had her arms wrapped around Liam, holding him back. His son was screaming something Ryan couldn't hear over the roar. 1 foot. The doorframe was on fire, an archway of flames they had to pass through. Ryan didn't think. He just pulled her through it, feeling the heat sear across his back and arms. And then they were falling down the porch steps, tumbling onto the front lawn as the night air hit his lungs like ice water. People swarmed them immediately. Someone threw a blanket over the woman. Someone else was yelling for water. Ryan rolled onto his back, gasping, his entire body one giant burn. Above him, the stars wheeled in a sky turned orange by the dying house. Then Liam's face was there, hovering over him, tears streaming down. "Dad? Dad!" "I'm okay," Ryan croaked, though he definitely wasn't. "I'm okay, buddy." Mrs. Chen appeared beside Liam, her weathered face tight with worry. "Don't move, Ryan. Ambulance is coming." He turned his head, even that small movement was agony, to look at the woman beside him. Someone had her on her side, checking her pulse. Tom Brennan was doing chest compressions. Her face was covered in soot, her hair singed short on one side, her clothes scorched, but her chest rose and fell. Barely, but it rose. "Is she alive?" Ryan managed. "She's breathing," Tom said, not stopping his compressions. "Barely, but breathing." Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Behind them, the Victorian groaned like a dying animal. Part of the second floor collapsed inward with a crash that sent sparks spiraling into the night sky. The fire would consume everything, but it hadn't consumed her. Ryan let his head fall back onto the grass, every breath a knife in his lungs. His hands were bright red, starting to blister. His arms felt like they'd been dipped in acid. But he was alive. She was alive. Why? Liam's voice was tiny, broken. Why did you go in there? Ryan looked up at his son, this beautiful boy who was his entire world, and said the only thing he could think of, because she was there, buddy. Because she was there and I could help. It wasn't poetic. It wasn't even particularly smart. But it was the truth. The ambulance arrived in a screech of brakes and flashing lights. Paramedics swarmed the scene, one team going to the woman, another to Ryan. Someone put an oxygen mask over his face. Someone else was cutting his shirt away, examining the burns. Their voices were professional, calm, discussing treatments and hospitals and degrees of injury. Ryan barely heard them. He was watching the other team work on the woman, seeing them load her onto a gurney, seeing the oxygen mask go over her face. Just before they lifted her into the ambulance, her eyes fluttered open. For just a second, maybe less, her gaze found his across the lawn. Her lips moved behind the oxygen mask. He couldn't hear what she said. Then they had her in the ambulance and the doors were closing and she was gone, sirens wailing as they rushed her to Mercy Hospital. The fire trucks had arrived, firefighters now attacking the blaze with massive hoses, but everyone knew the Victorian was lost. The best they could do was keep it from spreading to the neighbors' houses. "Sir, we need to take you in too," the paramedic told Ryan. She was young, maybe 25, with kind eyes. "You've got second-degree burns on your arms and back, and possible smoke inhalation. You need treatment." "I need to stay with my son." "We can take him too." "No." Ryan pulled the oxygen mask aside, his voice rough as gravel. "No hospitals for him. He doesn't need to see that. Mrs. Chen, can you—" "Of course," the old woman said immediately, her hand on Liam's shoulder. "I'll take him home, make him some tea, stay until you get back." "Dad, I want to go with you." Liam's face was desperate, still terrified. Ryan reached out with one burned hand, ignoring the paramedic's protest, and touched his son's cheek. "I need you to be brave for me, okay? Mrs. Chen will take care of you. I'll be back before breakfast. I promise." "You promised you'd always come home," Liam whispered. "You almost didn't." The words hit harder than the burns. Ryan pulled his son into a careful hug, feeling the small body shake with sobs against his chest. "But I did come home. And I always will. Always, Liam. That's a promise I'll never break." They loaded Ryan into the ambulance finally, Liam watching from Mrs. Chen's arms, the burning house casting everything in hellish light. As the doors closed, Ryan saw his son's face. Scared, proud, confused, angry, loving, all at once. He saw the neighbors standing in clusters, phones still out, probably already posting to social media. He saw the firefighters battling the blaze. He saw the spot on the lawn where the woman had lain, where he'd dragged her from death. Who was she? Why had she been in an abandoned renovation? Would she survive? The ambulance pulled away, and Ryan closed his eyes against the pain, against the adrenaline crash beginning to hit, against everything. He'd gone to work that morning as a single dad mechanic trying to keep his head above water. He'd come home a hero, though he didn't feel like one. He felt like an idiot who'd almost orphaned his son for a stranger. But when he closed his eyes, he saw her face behind the oxygen mask. He saw her lips moving, and he knew, somehow, that this night wasn't over. That saving her life was just the beginning of something he couldn't yet understand. At Mercy Hospital, they treated his burns, gave him IV fluids for smoke inhalation, pumped him full of pain medication that made the world soft and fuzzy at the edges. The attending physician, Dr. Rashid, her name tag said, told him he was lucky. Second-degree burns, yes, but no third-degree. Lung damage, but not permanent. He'd hurt like hell for weeks, but he'd recover completely. "What about the woman?" Ryan asked through the haze of medication. "The one from the fire?" Dr. Rashid's expression shifted slightly. "I can't discuss other patients. Is she alive?" A pause. Then, "Yes. She's in critical condition but stable." You saved her life, Mr. Cole. If she'd been in there even a minute longer, she didn't finish. She didn't need to. They kept Ryan overnight for observation. Liam visited in the morning, Mrs. Chen driving him over with a change of clothes and a breakfast burrito that Ryan couldn't eat because his stomach was still twisted in knots. His son sat beside the hospital bed, holding his hand carefully to avoid the bandages, and didn't say much, just stayed close. The house burned all the way down, Liam said finally. Nothing left but the chimney. Ryan nodded. He'd known it would. Houses that far gone never came back. Everyone's talking about you. Mrs. Chen says you're a hero. Tom said you're the bravest man on the street. Liam looked up at his father with those big, serious eyes. Are you a hero, Dad? Nobody. I'm just a dad who did what anyone should do. But nobody else did it, just you. Ryan didn't have an answer for that. The truth was, he didn't feel brave. He felt terrified, both of what he'd done and what could have happened. He felt lucky that he hadn't left Liam alone in the world. He felt exhausted and in pain and confused about why someone had been in that empty house in the first place. They discharged him that afternoon with instructions to change his bandages twice daily, prescriptions for pain medication and antibiotics, and orders to follow up with a burn specialist in a week. Ryan signed the papers, collected his son, and went home to their small ranch house that had never looked so beautiful. But he couldn't stop thinking about her, the woman with the singed hair and soot-covered face. Who was she? Did she have family? Had anyone come to see her in the hospital? 2 days passed. Ryan stayed home from work, unable to use his hands well enough to work on engines anyway. Martinez said to take all the time he needed, that his job would be waiting. Neighbors stopped by constantly, bringing casseroles, asking how he was, telling him they'd seen the news. Apparently someone's phone footage had gone viral. Local hero saves woman from inferno, the headline read on the county news website. Ryan hated the attention. He just wanted to heal and get back to normal. He wanted his arms to stop hurting. He wanted to stop having nightmares about burning alive, about not making it out, about Liam growing up without a father. On the evening of the second day, as the sun set in streaks of orange that reminded him too much of fire, headlights appeared at the end of their street. Ryan was on the front porch, watching Liam shoot baskets in the driveway, when he noticed them. Not just headlights, multiple sets, moving in formation. A convoy of vehicles, all black, all expensive looking. SUVs with windows tinted so dark they looked solid. Dad? Liam had stopped dribbling, basketball clutched to his chest. Dad, who is that? The vehicles stopped in front of their house. 4 SUVs, arranged like they were protecting something in the middle. For a long moment, nothing happened. Ryan stood slowly, his arms aching, his heart suddenly pounding. This wasn't normal. This wasn't right. Then the doors opened. Men stepped out first, 6 of them, all wearing dark suits, all with the same alert, watchful posture. Security. Professional, expensive security. They moved with military precision, scanning the street, the houses, the yards. One of them spoke quietly into a wrist microphone. Dad, are those soldiers? Liam whispered, backing toward the porch. I don't know, Ryan said, moving to stand in front of his son. Stay behind me. The middle SUV's door opened last. A woman stepped out, and Ryan's breath caught. It was her, but not her, not the broken, unconscious woman he dragged from the fire. This woman stood straight and tall, dressed in clothes that probably cost more than Ryan's truck. Her hair, previously singed and damaged, was now cut into a sleek professional style that somehow made the shorter length look intentional, fashionable. Her face, cleaned of soot, was striking. Sharp cheekbones, intelligent eyes, a mouth set in a line that suggested someone used to being obeyed. She looked at the house, his modest, slightly shabby ranch house with its peeling paint and chain-link fence, like she was seeing something from another planet. Then her eyes found Ryan on the porch, and something in her expression shifted. She walked forward, her security team flanking her at a discreet distance. Up close, Ryan could see the small details. A bandage on her left temple, mostly hidden by her hair. The slight stiffness in her movement that suggested her own injuries. The way her hands trembled just barely before she clasped them together. Mr. Cole, she said. Her voice was cultured, educated, the kind of voice that came from prep schools and boardrooms. My name is Isabella Grant. The name hung in the air between them. Ryan knew he should recognize it, that it meant something, but his mind was blank with shock and confusion. Liam, however, gasped. Isabella Grant? From Grant Dynamics? You're that Isabella Grant? The woman's lips quirked into an almost smile. Yes, that Isabella Grant. Ryan looked at his son, then back at the woman. I'm sorry, I don't... Grant Dynamics, Isabella said. We're a technology conglomerate, fire suppression systems, among other things. We're rather large. Rather large, Ryan would learn later, was like calling the ocean rather wet. Grant Dynamics was a multi-billion-dollar empire. Isabella Grant herself was one of the wealthiest women in the country, a self-made billionaire who'd built her company from nothing. Her face was regularly on magazine covers. She'd been profiled in Forbes, Fortune, Time, and Ryan had pulled her from a burning house without having any idea who she was. I don't know what to say, Ryan managed. I didn't know. I just saw someone who needed help. That's precisely why I'm here. Isabella reached into her jacket and withdrew a slim briefcase that one of her security team must have handed her. She opened it, revealing a check. Even from several feet away, Ryan could see the number of zeros. This is for you, Isabella said. It's insufficient, I know. There's no amount of money that adequately compensates for someone risking their life, but please, let me at least try to thank you. Ryan stared at the check. It was more money than he'd see in 5 years of working at the shop. Maybe 10 years. It was life-changing money. Liam's college fund money, pay off the mortgage money. I can't take that, he said. Isabella blinked. I'm sorry? I can't take your money, Ms. Grant. It's not charity, Mr. Cole. It's gratitude. It's also something I can't accept. Ryan looked at the check, then at her face, trying to find the right words. I didn't pull you out of that fire for a reward. I did it because it was the right thing to do, because you needed help, and I was there. Taking money for it feels wrong? Isabella's voice had gone very quiet. Yeah, wrong. For a long moment, she just looked at him. Her security team shifted uncomfortably. Even Liam seemed to be holding his breath. Finally, Isabella closed the briefcase and handed it back without looking. Then tell me what you do need, Mr. Cole. She spread her hand slightly, a gesture that seemed vulnerable despite being surrounded by armed guards. You ran into a burning house for a stranger. You nearly died saving my life. I can't just ignore that. I can't walk away and pretend it didn't matter. So please, tell me what you need. Ryan thought about it. He thought about his son, about the lessons he tried to teach every day. He thought about the kind of world he wanted Liam to grow up in. And he thought about this woman standing in his yard, surrounded by power and wealth, asking what she could do for a mechanic who'd made the simplest choice in the world. My son doesn't need money, Ryan said finally. He needs to see that kindness still matters, that people still help each other without expecting something in return, that being decent is its own reward. He looked at Liam, then back at Isabella. I need him to grow up believing that. So the best thing you can do for me is live. Live well. Be happy. Make the world a little better if you can. That's enough. The words landed like physical blows. Isabella actually stepped back half a step, her face going pale. Her security team exchanged glances. One of them murmured something into his wrist mic. Kindness, Isabella repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. You want me to believe in kindness. I want my son to believe in it, Ryan corrected gently. And I can't teach him that if I turn around and sell my good deed to the highest bidder. Isabella stared at him for what felt like forever. Then, incredibly, she laughed, a short, sharp sound that held more bitterness than humor. I used to believe in kindness once, she said, a long time ago, before I learned how the world really works. Maybe it works different than you think. Maybe. She looked around the neighborhood again, the modest houses, the chain-link fences, the basketball hoop in Ryan's driveway. Or maybe you're just a better person than most, Mr. Cole. I'm not, Ryan said honestly. I'm just a dad trying to set a good example. Isabella opened her mouth, closed it again. For the first time since she'd arrived, she looked uncertain, her armor of wealth and power cracking just slightly. I should go, she said finally. But thank you, not just for saving my life, for reminding me that people like you still exist. She turned to leave, her security team already moving to the vehicles. Ryan watched her go, feeling like something important had just happened, though he couldn't articulate what. Then Liam tugged on his sleeve. Dad, his son whispered urgently. Dad, you just turned down like $1 million. I know, buddy. Are you insane? Ryan laughed despite himself, wincing as it pulled at his burned skin. Maybe a little. They watched the convoy drive away, disappearing into the evening. The street returned to normal, just a quiet neighborhood. Just a single dad and his son standing on their modest porch. Nothing had changed, really. Except maybe everything had. Do you think she'll really do it? Liam asked. Live well and make the world better? I don't know, Ryan said honestly, but at least she knows someone believes she can. He didn't expect to see Isabella Grant again. Why would he? She was the billionaire CEO with a company to run. He was a mechanic with burned arms and a son to raise. Their worlds had intersected for one brief, terrifying moment, but now they'd diverge again, as worlds do. Ryan Cole had no idea how wrong he was. The next morning arrived with the kind of relentless sunshine that made everything look too bright, too normal. Ryan stood at the bathroom mirror, carefully changing the bandages on his arms while Liam ate cereal at the kitchen table. The burns were healing, pink and angry, but healing. The physical pain was manageable with the medication Dr. Rashid had prescribed. The mental replay of running into that fire, however, played on an endless loop. He'd just finished wrapping fresh gauze around his left forearm when his phone rang. Unknown number. Ryan almost didn't answer, probably another reporter wanting to interview the local hero, but something made him pick up. Mr. Cole? A woman's voice, professional and crisp. This is Sarah Chen, executive assistant to Isabella Grant. Ms. Grant would like to speak with you. Would you be available for a call this afternoon? Ryan glanced at his reflection, at his work shirt hanging on the back of the door, at the normal life he'd been trying to return to. I don't think she's quite insistent, sir. It's regarding a matter of some importance. There was something in the woman's tone that suggested refusing wasn't really an option. Ryan sighed. Fine. What time? 2 o'clock. She'll call this number directly. The line went dead before Ryan could respond. He stood there holding the phone, feeling like he'd just agreed to something he didn't fully understand. Through the doorway, he could see Liam hunched over his homework at the kitchen table, pencil moving slowly across the page. Normal. Everything was supposed to be normal now. At exactly 2 o'clock, the phone rang again. Mr. Cole! Isabella Grant's voice was different than it had been in his yard, less formal, more urgent. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Okay, Ryan said slowly, settling onto the front porch where Liam wouldn't hear. Why were you really at that house, the Victorian on Maple Street? Why were you there that night? The question caught him off guard. I wasn't at the house. I was driving home from work when I saw the fire. You weren't there earlier? You didn't see anyone else? No, Miss Grant, what's going on? A long pause. Then, the fire wasn't an accident. The investigators found evidence of arson. Someone set that fire deliberately, and I was inside when they did. The words hit like ice water. Ryan stood up, pacing across the porch. Someone tried to kill you? Or scare me? Or send a message? The police aren't sure yet. Her voice was controlled, but he could hear the tension underneath. I'm telling you this because you saved my life that night, and you deserve to know what you walked into. But I'm also calling because I need your help. My help? Ms. Grant, I'm a mechanic, not a bodyguard or a detective or... I know what you are, Mr. Cole. She cut him off, not unkindly. You're someone who runs toward danger when everyone else runs away. You're someone who sees a person who needs help and doesn't stop to calculate the cost. That's exactly the kind of person I need right now. Ryan leaned against the porch railing, watching a neighbor walk their dog down the street. Normal life, happening all around him. What are you asking me to do? Come to my facility tomorrow, just to talk. I'm working on something important, something that could save lives the way you saved mine. But I'm stuck. My engineers are brilliant, but they're missing something. They think like machines. I need someone who thinks like a human being. I fix cars, Ms. Grant. I don't know anything about your technology. You knew enough to save my life when millions of dollars of equipment couldn't. Please, Mr. Cole, just one conversation. If you think I'm wasting your time, I'll never bother you again. Ryan closed his eyes, feeling the trap closing around him even as he knew he was going to say yes. One conversation. That's all I'm asking. I'll send a car tomorrow at 9. I can drive myself. Your hands are still healing. Let me at least do this much. Before he could argue, she added, And Mr. Cole? Thank you. For the second time, thank you. She hung up. Ryan stood on the porch, phone in hand, wondering what he'd just agreed to. Inside, Liam called out asking if he wanted to play basketball. Normal life, still there, still waiting, but something had shifted, some invisible line had been crossed, and Ryan couldn't quite convince himself that everything was going to be okay. The car that arrived at 8:50 the next morning was not subtle. It was a black Mercedes with tinted windows, driven by a man in a suit who introduced himself as Marcus and said almost nothing else. Liam pressed his face to the living room window, eyes huge. Dad, that's the coolest car I've ever seen. It's just a car, buddy. Can I come with you? School, remember? Ryan kissed the top of his son's head, grabbed his jacket, and headed out. Mrs. Chen was already coming up the walk to watch Liam until the bus arrived. She gave Ryan a long, measuring look. You be careful, she said quietly. Rich people's problems have a way of becoming everybody's problems. It's just a conversation. That's how it always starts. The drive took 40 minutes, heading out of their modest neighborhood and into the industrial park on the city's north side. But Grant Dynamics wasn't just another warehouse. It was a compound, sleek glass buildings surrounded by manicured lawns and security gates that looked like they could withstand a military assault. Marcus drove through 2 checkpoints before finally pulling up to the main building's entrance. Isabella Grant was waiting in the lobby. She looked different in her element, more commanding, more certain. The vulnerability he'd glimpsed in his yard was gone, replaced by the armor of a woman who'd built an empire. But when she saw him, something softened in her expression. Mr. Cole, thank you for coming. Ryan, he said, if we're going to talk, you can call me Ryan. Then you should call me Isabella. She gestured toward the elevators. My lab is on the 3rd floor. I want to show you something. They rode up in silence, Isabella's security team maintaining a discreet distance. The elevator opened onto a floor that looked like something from a science fiction movie. All white walls and glass partitions, with people in lab coats moving between stations filled with equipment Ryan couldn't begin to identify. Isabella led him to a conference room overlooking the main lab floor. Through the glass, Ryan could see a team of engineers gathered around what looked like a miniature house. A detailed model, maybe 6 feet tall, complete with tiny furniture and working lights. Do you know what the leading cause of fire deaths is? Isabella asked, not waiting for an answer. Smoke inhalation. People die from the smoke before the flames ever reach them. Current fire suppression systems, sprinklers, foam systems, gas suppression, they all react to the fire itself. By the time they activate, the smoke has already done its damage. She pressed a button on the wall, and the miniature house sprang to life. Smoke began pouring from one of the tiny rooms, thick and black, spreading through the model structure. What we're trying to build is a system that detects smoke formation at the molecular level before it becomes visible, before it becomes deadly. A system that can identify the specific chemical signatures of different types of fires and respond with targeted suppression before the flames spread. Isabella's voice was passionate, alive in a way it hadn't been before. If it works, we could reduce fire deaths by 80%. 80%, Ryan. Ryan watched the smoke fill the tiny house, thinking of his own house, of Liam asleep in his Iron Man pajamas. That's incredible. It's also not working. Isabella's shoulders slumped slightly. We've been at this for 3 years. The detection works perfectly in controlled conditions, but in real-world testing, it fails 90% of the time. The system can't differentiate between dangerous smoke and harmless sources, cooking, candles, even heavy dust. It either triggers false alarms constantly or doesn't trigger at all when it should. What do your engineers say? They say we need better algorithms, more processing power, more refined sensors. Isabella turned to face him directly. But I think they're wrong. I think the problem isn't the technology. It's that they're trying to make a machine think like a person, and that's backwards. We need to make it respond like a person. Ryan frowned, trying to follow. I don't understand. When you ran into that house, how did you know where to find me? The smoke was too thick to see. The heat was overwhelming, but you found me anyway. He thought back to that night, to the nightmare of fire and smoke. I heard you scream, and then I followed the layout of the house. Even through the smoke, I could kind of sense where the rooms would be, where someone would try to go. The stairs were the obvious escape route, so that's where I headed. Exactly, Isabella's eyes lit up. You used context, human intuition. You didn't try to analyze the chemical composition of the smoke or calculate optimal search patterns. You thought about where a person would be, what they would do. That's what our system is missing. She led him down to the lab floor, where the team of engineers was resetting the model house. Up close, Ryan could see the incredible detail. Tiny books on tiny shelves, miniature photos on the walls, even small lamps that actually worked. It was someone's home, perfectly rendered at 1/6 scale. This is Dr. Lawrence Kim, Isabella said, introducing a man in his 40s with gray-streaked hair and tired eyes. He's been leading the project. Dr. Kim nodded at Ryan without much enthusiasm. Miss Grant, I really don't think— Humor me, Isabella cut him off. Ryan, I want you to watch the next test and tell me what you see. Not what you think you're supposed to see. Just your honest observation. Dr. Kim sighed but turned to his team. Run scenario 7. The model house came alive again. This time, smoke began in the tiny kitchen, pouring from what looked like a miniature stove. Within seconds, sensors throughout the house lit up, displaying data on screens around the lab. Numbers scrolled past. Chemical compositions, temperature readings, density measurements. The system processed everything, algorithms working to determine if this was a real threat. Finally, a red light flashed. The suppression system activated, releasing a fine mist throughout the tiny house. The smoke dissipated. The test was over. Successful detection and suppression in 8.3 seconds, Dr. Kim announced. Well within acceptable parameters. Now run scenario 7B, Isabella said. Dr. Kim's expression tightened, but he nodded. The team reset the house. This time, when the test started, the smoke looked identical to Ryan. Same location, same density. But the sensors reacted differently. The displays showed the same data, the same chemical signatures. But the system hesitated. 5 seconds passed. 10. The smoke spread through the tiny house, filling the miniature bedrooms. 15 seconds. Finally, the red light flashed. Suppression activated. But it was too late. The smoke had already reached every room. What was different? Ryan asked. Nothing, Dr. Kim said flatly. That's the problem. Both tests used the same smoke generator, the same fuel source, the same everything. But in test 7, the system responded immediately. In 7B, it delayed. We've run this 100 times with identical results. The system is supposed to learn, to adapt, but instead it's becoming inconsistent. Ryan studied the tiny house, thinking, run it again, but this time tell me what time of day we're simulating. Dr. Kim blinked. I'm sorry? The scenario. In the real world, what time would it be? Morning? Evening? The engineers exchanged glances. Finally, Dr. Kim said, Scenario 7 is meant to simulate 6 p.m. on a weekday, dinner preparation time. 7B simulates 10 p.m. And people cook dinner at 6 p.m. but not usually at 10, Ryan said slowly, pieces clicking together in his mind. So when the system detects smoke from the kitchen at 6, it's unsure because that's normal. But at 10, kitchen smoke is unusual, so it should respond faster. Except it's doing the opposite. Dr. Kim's eyes widened. The learning algorithm. It's been trained on thousands of hours of household data. It knows that evening hours have more ambient smoke from cooking, so it's programmed to be more cautious during those times to avoid false alarms. But that means it's slower to respond when real danger happens during dinner time, Isabella finished, when most people are actually home and at risk. We've been focused on eliminating false positives, Dr. Kim said, a mix of excitement and frustration in his voice. We were so worried about the system triggering unnecessarily that we made it too conservative during high-activity periods. But that's exactly when people need it most. The team erupted into discussion, engineers pulling up data models and arguing over algorithms. Isabella pulled Ryan aside, away from the controlled chaos. "Do you see now why I needed you here?" she said quietly. "They're brilliant people, but they've been so deep in the technology that they forgot to think about the humans using it. You saw it in 30 seconds. I just asked a simple question. That's my point. Sometimes the simple questions are the ones nobody thinks to ask." She hesitated, then added, "I want to hire you." Ryan laughed. "To do what? I don't know anything about technology. You know about people. You know about real-world situations and practical thinking. I need someone on this team who isn't an engineer who can ask the stupid questions that turn out not to be stupid at all." When Ryan started to protest, Isabella held up a hand. "Not full-time, just consultant work. Come in a few times a week. Look at what we're doing. Give your perspective. I'll pay you more than the auto shop, and you can still work there part-time if you want." "Isabella, I appreciate this, but I'm not offering this out of gratitude, Ryan. I'm offering it because you're valuable. What you did just now, that's going to save lives, actual human lives. Don't you want to be part of that?" Ryan looked through the glass at the team of engineers, now excitedly reconfiguring their model. He thought about Liam, about teaching his son that kindness mattered. But maybe kindness wasn't just about individual acts. Maybe it was also about building systems that protected people, about using whatever skills you had to make the world a little safer. "I need to think about it," he said finally. "Fair enough. Take all the time you need." Isabella handed him a card with her personal cell number written on the back. "But Ryan, I meant what I said in your yard. I used to believe in kindness once. Being around you makes me want to believe in it again. Whatever you decide, thank you for that." Marcus drove Ryan home in the same silent efficiency. But as they pulled onto Maple Street, Ryan saw something that made his blood run cold. The charred remains of the Victorian were still there, a black skeleton of what had once been a home. And standing in front of it, taking photos, was a man in an expensive suit. "Stop the car," Ryan said. Marcus pulled over smoothly. Ryan got out, his heart pounding for reasons he couldn't quite articulate. The man with the camera looked up as Ryan approached, his expression carefully neutral. "Can I help you?" the man asked. He was maybe 50, with silver hair and the kind of expensive watch that cost more than Ryan's truck. "I live here," Ryan said, gesturing to his house 2 doors down. "Who are you?" "Gerald Hoffman. I'm with Pinnacle Development." He extended a hand that Ryan didn't shake. "We're looking into purchasing this lot. It's not for sale." "Everything's for sale, Mr. Cole." "And no, not everything is." Ryan crossed his arms, ignoring the pull on his healing burns. "That house burned down 3 days ago. Someone nearly died. You're already circling like a vulture?" Hoffman's smile didn't waver. "I understand you're upset. It was a terrible tragedy. But the property owner wants to sell, and we're interested in the location. Once the investigation concludes, we'll clear the remains and build something new, something better." "The investigation?" Ryan latched onto the word. "You mean into the arson?" For just a second, something flickered in Hoffman's eyes. "I'm sure I don't know what you mean. The fire marshal's report isn't complete yet. But you know it was arson. I know that properties in this neighborhood are undervalued, Mr. Cole, and I know that Pinnacle Development is prepared to make very generous offers to homeowners who want to sell." He pulled a card from his wallet. "If you're interested in discussing your own property, give me a call." Ryan took the card only to crush it in his fist. "I'm not interested, and I'm going to be watching this lot. If I see anyone trying to rush the investigation or intimidate the owner into selling, I'm going to make noise about it." Hoffman's pleasant expression finally cracked. "That would be unwise. These are complicated business matters. People who interfere sometimes find themselves facing complicated consequences." "Is that a threat?" "It's advice, from someone who knows how things work." Hoffman walked back to his Mercedes, not unlike the one that had driven Ryan that morning, and drove away without another word. Ryan stood in the street, his mind racing. It couldn't be coincidence. Isabella Grant nearly dying in a house fire, and now a development company rushing in to buy the property. But what was the connection? And why would anyone target a billionaire CEO in his neighborhood? His phone rang. Isabella. Ryan, where are you? Marcus said you got out on Maple Street. I'm home. Isabella, do you know a company called Pinnacle Development? A pause. Yes, they're one of our competitors. Why? One of their executives was just here at the burned house taking photos. He made it pretty clear they want to buy the property, and he wasn't happy when I questioned him about it. Gerald Hoffman. Isabella's voice had gone sharp. Silver hair, expensive suit, drives a black Mercedes. That's him. Get inside your house right now. Lock the doors. I'm sending security. Isabella, what's going on? Pinnacle isn't just a competitor. They've been trying to acquire Grant Dynamics for 2 years. When I refused to sell, they started playing dirty, industrial espionage, patent challenges, spreading rumors to damage our stock price. If Hoffman was at that house, she trailed off, then spoke to someone else. Yes, send a team to the Cole residence immediately. Full security detail. You think Pinnacle set that fire? Ryan asked, his stomach dropping. You think they tried to kill you? I think they'll do whatever it takes to force me out. And now they know you're connected to me. Ryan, please, just get inside and wait for my team. She hung up. Ryan stood frozen for a moment, processing everything. Then he ran for his house, taking the porch steps 2 at a time. Inside, Liam looked up from his homework with surprise. Dad? I thought you weren't coming home until… Pack a bag, Ryan said, his voice tight. Just essentials. We're leaving for a few days. What? Why? I'll explain in the car. Just trust me, Liam. Please. His son must have heard something in his voice because he didn't argue, just ran to his room and started throwing clothes into his backpack. Ryan did the same, his hands shaking as he grabbed their medications, Liam's inhaler, important documents. What had he done? He just wanted to save someone from a fire. Now he was fleeing his own home because billionaires and developers were playing dangerous games. A car pulled up outside, not Marcus this time, but a different vehicle. A dark SUV that looked identical to the ones that had accompanied Isabella to his house. 2 men got out, the same alert, professional demeanor as her security team. But then another car appeared, a black Mercedes. Gerald Hoffman stepped out, that same pleasant smile on his face. Ryan's blood turned to ice. He grabbed Liam's hand. We're going out the back. Dad, what's happening? Just stay close to me. They were halfway through the kitchen when someone knocked on the front door. Not knocked, pounded, hard enough to rattle the frame. Mr. Cole, Hoffman's voice no longer pleasant. We need to talk. Ryan pulled Liam toward the back door, his heart hammering. But as he reached for the handle, it opened from the outside. A man stood there, bigger than the ones from the SUV, with a face that suggested he was paid to hurt people. Going somewhere? The man asked. Ryan pushed Liam behind him, his mind racing for options. They were trapped. Front door and back door, both blocked. His phone was in his pocket, but calling 911 would take too long. Screaming for help might work if the neighbors heard, but might also get them hurt faster. Then he heard it. More vehicles outside arriving fast, car doors slamming, voices shouting commands. The man blocking the back door suddenly looked uncertain. That would be my security team, said a voice from the front of the house. Isabella Grant walked into view, flanked by 4 guards in suits. And I've already called the police. They're 2 minutes out. Hoffman appeared behind her, his pleasant mask completely gone now. Miss Grant, what a surprise. Is it? Isabella's voice was cold steel. You tried to kill me 3 days ago. Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out? Did you think I wouldn't protect the man who saved my life? I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm simply here to discuss business with Mr. Cole. With 3 of your thugs? That's quite a sales pitch. Isabella moved fully into the house, her security team spreading out in a practiced formation. The big man at the back door quietly retreated. Here's what's going to happen, Gerald. You're going to leave, all of you, and then you're going to pray that the fire marshal and the police don't find enough evidence to charge you with attempted murder. You can't prove anything. Maybe not. But I can make your life very, very difficult. I can file lawsuits that tie up Pinnacle for years. I can use every connection I have to ensure you never get another building permit in this city. I can make you radioactive in the business community. She smiled, and it was terrifying. Or you can walk away right now and hope I decide the fight isn't worth my time. Your choice. Hoffman stared at her for a long moment. Then, without another word, he turned and walked out. His men followed. Through the front window, Ryan watched them drive away. The police arrived 90 seconds later, just as Isabella had predicted. Ryan gave a statement, told them about Hoffman's veiled threats, about seeing him at the burned house. The officers took notes, said they'd look into it, but Ryan could see the skepticism in their eyes. Rich people's problems, like Mrs. Chen had said. When they finally left, Isabella turned to Ryan and Liam. Her armor had cracked again, showing the frightened woman underneath. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I'm so sorry. I never meant to bring this to your door." "It's not your fault," Ryan said automatically. But even as he said it, he wondered if that was true. He'd chosen to run into that fire. He'd chosen to engage with Isabella afterward. Every choice had led here, to his son scared and confused, to men threatening them in their own home. "I want you to come stay at one of my properties," Isabella said. "Just until we know for sure that Hoffman and Pinnacle back off. It's secure, comfortable. Liam can still go to school. I'll have drivers take him. Please, let me keep you safe." Ryan wanted to refuse, wanted to insist they'd be fine, that he could protect his son himself. But looking at Liam's frightened face, at the windows where dangerous men had been minutes ago, he knew he'd be lying. "Okay," he said, "but just for a few days, until things settle down." Isabella nodded, relief visible on her face. "Thank you for trusting me." They packed quickly, gathering what they'd need for a short stay. As they loaded into one of Isabella's SUVs, Mrs. Chen came out of her house, her face creased with worry. "You be safe," she told Ryan, gripping his hand. "And you remember, you saved that woman's life. That's good karma. It'll protect you." "I hope you're right," Ryan said. The SUV pulled away from Maple Street, from the modest ranch house that Ryan had fought so hard to keep after his wife died. In the rearview mirror, he could see the charred skeleton of the Victorian, a reminder of how quickly everything could burn. Beside him, Liam sat quietly, his backpack clutched on his lap. "Dad, are we in danger?" Ryan wanted to lie, to comfort him, but he'd always promised his son the truth. "I don't know, buddy, but we're going to be smart, and we're going to stay close to people who can help us, and we're going to be okay." "Because of the woman you saved?" "Yeah, because of her." Liam processed this, then asked the question Ryan had been dreading. "Do you wish you hadn't saved her? Would things be easier if you'd just stayed in the truck that night?" Ryan looked out the window, at the city passing by, at the normal people living their normal lives. He thought about the choice he'd made, running into that fire, and all the consequences that had followed. The burns on his arms, the attention, the job offer, the threats, everything that had spiraled out from that one decision. "No," he said finally. "I don't wish that. She's a person, Liam. Her life matters. And yeah, things are complicated now, but that doesn't mean saving her was wrong. Sometimes doing the right thing is complicated. That doesn't make it any less right." His son nodded slowly, seeming to accept this. "Okay. But Dad? Next time maybe just call 911 first." Despite everything, Ryan laughed. "Deal, buddy. Deal." The property Isabella took them to wasn't what Ryan expected. He'd imagined some sterile fortress-like compound. Instead, it was a beautiful craftsman house on the outskirts of the city, surrounded by trees, with a yard big enough for Liam to run around. Security was present but discreet. Cameras hidden in the eaves, guards patrolling the perimeter but staying out of sight. "This is my personal retreat," Isabella explained as she showed them inside. "I bought it years ago when the company was driving me crazy. Somewhere to escape and just breathe. You'll be safe here." The interior was warm, lived in, full of comfortable furniture and bookshelves. Nothing like the sterile luxury Ryan had expected from a billionaire's property. In the kitchen, there was even a coffee mug sitting by the sink with a tea stain inside, as if Isabella had been here recently and forgotten to clean up. "There are 3 bedrooms upstairs," Isabella continued. "Take whichever you want. The fridge is stocked. Internet password is on the router. Make yourselves at home." "You're not staying?" Ryan asked. "I have to get back to the office, deal with the fallout from Hoffman's little visit. But security will be here 24/7, and I'll check in constantly." She knelt down to Liam's level. Hey, I know this is scary and confusing, but your dad is the bravest person I've ever met, and I'm going to do everything I can to keep both of you safe, okay? Liam nodded, not quite meeting her eyes. Okay. After Isabella left, Ryan and Liam explored the house in silence. Liam claimed the bedroom with the window seat overlooking the garden. Ryan took the one next door, small and simple, with just a bed and a dresser and a single photograph on the wall. The photograph stopped him cold. It showed a young girl, maybe 12, standing with an older man in firefighter gear. They were laughing at something off camera, his arm around her shoulders. The man had Isabella's eyes. The girl had Isabella's smile. Her father, the one she'd mentioned that day in his kitchen, the one who died pulling her from a fire. Ryan stood there for a long time, staring at that frozen moment of happiness, understanding for the first time why Isabella had built an entire company around fire prevention. She wasn't trying to control what couldn't be controlled, like she'd said. She was trying to save everyone else's fathers, everyone else's daughters. His phone buzzed, a text from Isabella. Thank you for trusting me. Get some rest. We'll figure this out. Ryan typed back, I saw the photo in the bedroom. I understand now. 3 dots appeared, dancing as she typed, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, he would have liked you. You remind me of him. Ryan didn't know what to say to that, so he just sent back a simple, I'm honored. That night, after Liam had fallen asleep in the unfamiliar bedroom, Ryan stood at the window looking out at the dark garden. Somewhere out there, Isabella's security team kept watch. Somewhere in the city, Gerald Hoffman was plotting his next move. Somewhere in the ashes of that Victorian, the truth about what happened was waiting to be uncovered. And here, in this quiet house that smelled like cedar and safety, Ryan Cole tried to figure out how his life had changed so completely in just 3 days. His phone rang. Isabella again, calling late. I can't sleep, she admitted without preamble. I keep thinking about what Hoffman said to you, that people who interfere face complicated consequences. Ryan, I need you to understand what you're caught up in. Pinnacle Development doesn't just want to buy my company. They want to destroy it, and they've already shown they're willing to kill for it. Then we go to the police. We make them investigate. With what evidence? Hoffman was at the burned house taking pictures. That's not illegal. He came to your home to talk business. Also not illegal. He brought security because he's a wealthy man in a rough neighborhood. She sighed. That's how they work. Everything legal, everything defensible, until suddenly someone's dead and it looks like an accident. So what do? We be smarter than them. We finish Project Phoenix, the fire detection system. We make it work so well that Pinnacle's competing systems become obsolete. We win in the market, not in the shadows. She paused. And we keep you and Liam safe while we do it, which means I need to ask you something, and I need you to really think about your answer. What? Work with me. Not as a consultant, as a partner. Help me finish this project, and I'll give you equity in the technology. If it works, when it works, you'll have enough money to never worry again. Liam's college fund, your mortgage, everything. You'll be set. Isabella, I told you, this isn't about the money. Not really. It's about building something that matters. You asked me to make the world a little better. Let me do it. Let us do it together. Her voice dropped. Please, Ryan. I can't explain it, but I feel like you being in that fire wasn't an accident. Like you were supposed to save me so we could do this. Does that sound crazy? Maybe, Ryan admitted, but I'm starting to think crazy is relative. He heard her laugh softly on the other end. Get some sleep. We'll talk more tomorrow. And Ryan, thank you for everything. After she hung up, Ryan checked on Liam one more time, watching his son sleep peacefully in the unfamiliar bed. 8 years old, and already being pulled into a world of billionaires and corporate warfare and threats in the night, but also being pulled into a world where ordinary people could build extraordinary things, where a mechanic could help save lives, where kindness could change everything. Ryan thought about the choice ahead of him. Go back to the auto shop and hope Hoffman and Pinnacle forgot about them, or step forward into whatever Isabella was offering with all its danger and promise. He thought about his wife, gone 3 years now, and what she would have said. She'd always been the brave one, the dreamer. She'd have told him to take the leap. He thought about Liam and what lessons this would teach him. That you run from danger. or that you face it when the stakes are worth it. Finally, he thought about the fire, about Isabella's unconscious body in his arms, about choosing to run into the flames when everyone else stood frozen. Some choices you only got to make once. Some moments defined everything that came after. Ryan made his decision. Tomorrow, he'd tell Isabella yes. Not for the money, not for the adventure, but because she was right. He'd been meant to save her, and maybe, together, they could save a whole lot more. Outside, the night was quiet. Inside, two people slept safely under the watch of guards they'd never see. And somewhere between those two worlds, Ryan Cole stood at the window, a single dad who'd pulled a woman from a fire and found his whole life transformed. The really terrifying part? He had a feeling this was just the beginning. Morning arrived with the smell of coffee and the sound of Liam's laughter drifting up from downstairs. Ryan descended to find his son sitting at the kitchen island, eating pancakes, while one of Isabella's security guards, a woman named Torres with kind eyes and a service weapon visible at her hip, flipped more on the griddle. "Your kid says you make terrible pancakes," Torres said without turning around. "I'm defending your honor." "My dad burns everything," Liam confirmed cheerfully, syrup on his chin. "Even cereal somehow." "That was one time, and the milk was expired," Ryan protested, but he was smiling. The normalcy of the moment felt like oxygen after drowning. His phone buzzed. "Isabella. Can you come to the facility at noon? Something you need to see." Ryan texted back his agreement, then spent the morning with Liam, trying to pretend everything was normal. They played video games. They did homework. They avoided talking about why they were hiding in a stranger's house while armed guards watched the perimeter. When Torres drove Ryan to Grant Dynamics just before noon, Liam barely looked up from his math worksheet, already comfortable in this strange new reality in the way only children could be. The facility felt different today, more urgent. Ryan could feel it the moment he walked through the door, engineers moving faster, voices more animated, an electric tension in the air. Isabella met him in the lobby, and he immediately saw that something had changed. She looked exhausted but alive, the way people looked when they'd been up all night chasing something important. "We did it," she said without preamble. "Or we're close. After you left yesterday, Dr. Kim and his team completely rebuilt the learning algorithm based on your observation. They've been running tests all night." She grabbed his hand. Her fingers were cold, trembling slightly with fatigue and excitement. "Come see." The lab was controlled chaos. The miniature house sat at the center, surrounded by engineers and monitors displaying streams of data. Dr. Kim looked like he hadn't slept, his hair standing at odd angles, coffee stains on his lab coat, but his eyes blazed with the fervor of discovery. "Mr. Cole," he said, and there was respect in his voice now, maybe even gratitude. "We've run 63 scenarios in the past 18 hours. Kitchen fires, electrical fires, candle accidents, even someone smoking in bed. The system correctly identified and responded to every single one in under 5 seconds." "Every single one?" Ryan asked. "That's impossible, we thought," Dr. Kim interrupted. "But we stopped trying to make the system perfect at eliminating false positives. Instead, we programmed it to think about context the way you described. Time of day, location in the house, patterns of normal activity. It's not just detecting smoke anymore. It's understanding the environment." Isabella pulled up a chair beside the model house. "Show him scenario 47. Dr. Kim nodded to his team. The lights in the miniature house shifted to simulate early morning, maybe 6 a.m., that gray pre-dawn time when the world was still half asleep. Then smoke began to drift from the tiny bedroom, thin and lazy, the kind that came from someone who'd fallen asleep with a cigarette. The sensors throughout the house lit up immediately. Data streamed across the monitors, and within 3 seconds, the system activated. Not with the aggressive suppression they'd seen in earlier tests, but with something gentler. A soft alarm, lights flashing in sequence toward the bedroom, and a targeted release of suppressant only in the affected room. "It knows this is a bedroom fire at dawn," Dr. Kim explained. "High probability of someone asleep and unable to evacuate. So it prioritizes 2 things, waking them up with the alarm and lights, and controlling the fire without filling the entire house with suppressant that might disorient them further." Ryan watched the tiny scenario play out, thinking about real people in real houses, about fathers and mothers and children who might wake up confused and scared. It's trying to save them, not just stop the fire. Exactly, Isabella said softly. That's what we were missing all along. We were building a system to fight fires. We should have been building a system to save people. The test concluded successfully. The engineers reset for the next scenario. Isabella pulled Ryan away from the controlled chaos, through a door into a smaller conference room where the noise and energy couldn't follow. She closed the door and leaned against it, suddenly looking as exhausted as she probably felt. The board meets tomorrow, she said. They've been skeptical about Project Phoenix from the beginning. Too expensive, too ambitious, too risky. But if I can show them these results, if I can prove it works... She trailed off, then met his eyes. I need you there. Isabella, I'm not a businessman or an engineer, The reason it works, she finished. You're the human element that made the difference. The board needs to see that. They need to understand that sometimes the solution isn't more technology. Sometimes it's more humanity. Ryan thought about Liam, safe at the house with Torres. He thought about his old life at the auto shop, simple and predictable and safe. He thought about the choice he'd made last night, standing at that window, deciding to step forward instead of back. Okay, he said. I'll be there. Isabella's shoulders sagged with relief. Thank you. I know I keep saying that, but I mean it every time. Thank you, Ryan. You said last night that you felt like me being in that fire wasn't an accident, like I was supposed to save you. Ryan leaned against the conference table. I've been thinking about that. About your father. Her expression shuddered immediately, walls going up. What about him? He died saving you from a fire, and you've spent your whole life building systems to prevent what happened to him from happening to others. But maybe, Ryan chose his words carefully, maybe it's not just about prevention. Maybe it's about making sure that when the worst happens, people like him, people who run toward danger, have the best chance of succeeding, of coming home. Isabella was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. He didn't come home. He got me out. But he went back in for our neighbor's cat. A stupid, scared cat. The house collapsed before he made it out. She looked away. For years I was so angry at him, for dying over a cat, for leaving me. But he couldn't help it. That's who he was. He saw something that needed saving and he didn't calculate the odds. He just acted. Like I did. Like you did. She met his eyes again, tears threatening but not falling. When I woke up on that lawn and saw you lying there, covered in burns, your son screaming for you, I saw my father. I saw that same impossible choice between safety and conscience. And I realized that I've been trying to build systems that would make that choice unnecessary. But that's wrong. People like you and him, you'll always make that choice. The best I can do is make sure you survive it. Ryan didn't know what to say to that. The weight of it pressed against his chest, the knowledge that he'd become a symbol of something larger than himself, a reminder of someone she'd lost. It was too much responsibility, too much meaning attached to what had been a split-second decision. But maybe that was the point. Maybe all the important decisions were split-second, made without time to consider consequences or symbolism or meaning. You just saw someone who needed help, and you either acted or you didn't. Everything else came after. Tell me about the board meeting, he said, changing the subject to something more manageable. What do I need to know? Isabella straightened, wiping at her eyes quickly, rebuilding her armor. There are 7 board members. 3 of them have been trying to force me out for the past year, convinced they can run the company better. 2 are loyal to me. 2 are undecided. The presentation needs to convince those 2 undecided votes that Project Phoenix is worth the investment. And if it doesn't, then the board might vote to shut down the project, maybe vote to remove me as CEO. She said it calmly, but Ryan could see the fear underneath. Hoffman and Pinnacle have been spreading rumors, making investors nervous. This presentation isn't just about Phoenix. It's about whether I keep control of the company my father's death inspired me to build. The stakes suddenly felt impossibly high. Ryan was just a mechanic who'd pulled someone from a fire. Now he was supposed to help save a multi-billion-dollar company from a corporate takeover? It was absurd. It was terrifying. It was exactly the kind of thing he'd decided last night to say yes to. Then we'd better make sure they say yes, Ryan said. They spent the rest of the afternoon preparing. Dr. Kim and his team compiled the test results into a presentation. Isabella worked with her communications director on the narrative, the story they'd tell about how Phoenix had evolved, and Ryan sat in the corner feeling increasingly out of his depth, until Isabella pulled up a chair beside him. "You're not going to give a speech," she said, reading his anxiety. "You're just going to answer questions honestly. When they ask why the system works now when it didn't before, tell them what you told me. When they ask why we need a mechanic on an engineering team, tell them about context and human intuition. Just be yourself, Ryan. That's all I'm asking." "What if being myself isn't enough?" "It was enough to save my life. It'll be enough for this." Torres picked him up at 5, driving him back to the house where Liam had apparently spent the day teaching the security team how to play Minecraft. Ryan found his son in the living room, 3 heavily armed guards watching intently as he explained the finer points of redstone engineering. "Your kid's a natural teacher," Torres said, grinning. "Martinez hasn't played a video game in 20 years and now he's building automated farms." That night, after Liam fell asleep, Ryan sat in the unfamiliar bedroom staring at his phone. He should call someone. Mrs. Chen to check on his house. Martinez at the auto shop to explain why he wouldn't be in for a while. His sister in Portland, who he hadn't talked to in months. Instead, he found himself looking at photos of his wife. Sarah, who'd died 3 years ago in a car accident so sudden and stupid that Ryan still sometimes forgot she was gone. She'd been the brave one, the dreamer. She'd have loved this insanity, the billionaire CEO, the corporate intrigue, the chance to build something meaningful. "I hope I'm doing the right thing," he whispered to her photo. "I hope you'd be proud." His phone rang. Isabella calling late again. "Can't sleep?" he asked. Apparently that's a thing now. She sounded tired but wired, that same electric energy from earlier. "I keep running through tomorrow's presentation, trying to anticipate every question, every objection. I'm driving myself crazy." "Want to know what I'm doing?" "Tell me." "Talking to a photo of my dead wife, asking if she'd approve of me getting mixed up with a billionaire and her corporate drama." Isabella laughed, a real laugh that sounded surprised out of her. "What do you think she'd say?" "That I'm an idiot, but she loves me anyway. That sometimes the craziest choices are the right ones. That life's too short to play it safe." Ryan looked at Sarah's frozen smile. She died on her way home from the grocery store. No warning, no goodbye. 1 minute she existed, and the next she didn't. Ever since then, I've been so careful, so focused on keeping Liam safe, on not taking risks, on just surviving. But maybe that's not what she'd want. Maybe she'd want me to live. Is that what this is? Living? I think so. Terrifying, expensive, dangerous living. But living. He paused. What about you? Is this living or just surviving? Isabella was quiet for so long he thought she might have hung up. Finally, I don't know anymore. I built this company to honor my father, to prevent what happened to him. But somewhere along the way it stopped being about saving lives and started being about winning. About being successful enough that I could prove his death meant something. And now Hoffman is trying to take it all away, and I'm realizing I don't even know if I want to keep fighting for it. But you are fighting. Why? Because you reminded me why it mattered. Standing in your kitchen, telling me that kindness still exists. I hadn't felt that in years, Ryan. Hope. Real, actual hope that the world could be better. Her voice cracked slightly. I'm fighting because I want to be the person you think I am. Does that make sense? It made perfect sense. Terrifying, vulnerable, honest sense. Tomorrow's going to work out, Ryan said. The board's going to see what I see, that you're building something that matters. That Phoenix isn't just technology, it's proof that we can make the world a little less dangerous, a little kinder. And if they don't see it, then we make them see it, together. After they said goodnight, Ryan lay in the dark thinking about second chances. He'd gotten one when that fire hadn't killed him. Isabella had gotten one when he'd pulled her out. Maybe this whole crazy situation was about giving second chances to each other, the chance to be brave again, to believe again, to build something meaningful again. The board meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. Torres drove Ryan and Isabella to Grant Dynamics headquarters, a gleaming tower downtown that made Ryan feel even more out of place in his button-down shirt and khakis. Isabella wore armor today, a severe black suit, her hair pulled back sharply, every inch the powerful CEO. But in the elevator up to the executive floor, she grabbed his hand and squeezed once, quickly, a gesture of fear and gratitude that reminded him she was still human under all that polish. The boardroom was exactly what Ryan expected, a long mahogany table, leather chairs, walls of windows overlooking the city. 7 people were already seated, ranging from a woman in her 70s with sharp, calculating eyes to a young man who couldn't be much over 30, probably a tech investor who'd bought his way onto the board. Isabella introduced Ryan to each of them, and he saw the skepticism immediately. These were people who dealt in billions, who made decisions that affected thousands of employees and millions of customers. And here was a mechanic in off-the-rack clothes, supposedly essential to their most ambitious project. "Shall we begin?" The elderly woman, Margaret Chen, board chairwoman, gestured to the presentation screen. "Ms. Grant, I understand you have an update on Project Phoenix." What followed was the most intense hour of Ryan's life. Isabella presented the test results with clinical precision, walking the board through the evolution of the system, the breakthrough that had come from reconsidering the human element. Dr. Kim joined via video conference to answer technical questions. The data was impressive, even Ryan could see that. Success rates in the high 90s, response times faster than any competing system, costs that would make mass production feasible. But the 3 hostile board members weren't convinced. "This is all very impressive in a laboratory," said one of them, a man named Barrows with silver hair and a smug expression. "But you've been promising results for 3 years, Ms. Grant. 3 years and hundreds of millions of dollars, something that works with human intuition." Mr. Cole's insight changed everything. Barrows turned to Ryan with barely concealed disdain. "Mr. Cole, no disrespect, but you're a mechanic. What possible insight could you offer to a team of engineers with advanced degrees?" Ryan felt his face flush, but Isabella's hand on his arm steadied him. This was what they'd prepared for. Just be honest, just be himself. "I'm a dad," Ryan said, "and when my son was learning to ride a bike, I could have explained the physics of balance and momentum and center of gravity. But that's not what helped him learn. What helped was me saying, if you start to fall, just pedal harder. Simple advice based on instinct, not calculation. That's what your engineers were missing. They were so focused on the physics that they forgot about the kid on the bike." The room was silent. Then Margaret Chen smiled slightly. "Interesting analogy, but can you give us something more concrete?" Ryan glanced at Isabella, who nodded encouragement. "Your system was trying to be perfect. 0 false alarms, 100% accuracy. But humans don't work that way. We're okay with being wrong sometimes if it means we're right when it really matters. A smoke detector that goes off because you burn toast is annoying, but you tolerate it because you know it'll save your life if there's a real fire. Your system needed to learn that same tolerance. Stop being afraid of being wrong and start prioritizing being right when lives are on the line." Another board member, a woman named Patricia Okonkwo, leaned forward. "That's essentially what you told the engineering team? To accept imperfection?" "I told them to stop thinking about fires and start thinking about people. A fire at 6 p.m. in the kitchen is probably dinner. A fire at 3 a.m. in the bedroom is definitely an emergency. Same smoke, different context, different response needed. The system wasn't accounting for how people actually live." Barrows scoffed. "We have data scientists who specialize in exactly that kind of analysis. The idea that they needed a mechanic to point out something so basic? They didn't need me to point it out," Ryan interrupted, surprising himself with his own firmness. "They knew all this intellectually, but sometimes you're so deep in the problem that you can't see the obvious answer. I'm not smarter than your engineers, I just had fresh eyes." "Fresh eyes that cost us another $100 million in development," Barrows shot back. "Ms. Grant, this is exactly the problem. You're making emotional decisions instead of business decisions. You feel grateful to Mr. Cole for saving your life, understandably, but that gratitude is clouding your judgment. Bringing him onto the team, giving him equity, restructuring our most expensive project based on his hunches, They're not hunches, Isabella said coldly. They're insights that have produced measurable results. The test data speaks for itself. The test data shows a short-term improvement in a controlled environment. We need long-term field testing, real-world applications, which will cost another year and another 100 million. Barrows looked around the table. I'm recommending we shut down Project Phoenix immediately and focus our resources on acquisitions. There are smaller companies with proven fire suppression technologies that we could buy for less than we've already spent on Phoenix. You mean like Pinnacle Development? Isabella's voice was ice. The room went very still. Barrows' expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. I don't know what you're implying. I'm implying that Pinnacle has been trying to force me out so they can acquire Grant Dynamics. And I find it interesting that you're recommending we abandon our most innovative project right when it's showing real promise, almost like you have a vested interest in seeing it fail. That's a serious accusation, Margaret Chen said quietly. It's a serious situation, Isabella responded. Someone set fire to a house I was inspecting. Someone sent intimidation to Mr. Cole after he saved my life. And someone on this board has been leaking confidential project information to our competitors. So yes, Margaret, I'm making accusations, because I'm done pretending this is just normal business disagreement. The room erupted. Board members talking over each other, demanding proof, threatening lawsuits. Ryan sat frozen, watching the company implode around Isabella's declaration. This was corporate warfare, and he was hopelessly out of his depth. Then Barrows stood up, his face red. This is absurd. I've served on this board for 8 years. My reputation is beyond question. The fact that you're making these paranoid claims shows exactly why you're unfit to lead this company, Ms. Grant. You're emotional, impulsive, and you're letting personal relationships compromise your business judgment. Sit down, Thomas. Margaret Chen's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Everyone fell silent. The old woman looked at Barrows with an expression Ryan couldn't quite read. I was wondering when this would come up. I've known about your dealings with Pinnacle for 6 weeks. I've been building a case, gathering evidence. I was planning to address it in executive session next month, but since Ms. Grant has forced the issue, let's address it now. Barrows went pale. Margaret, I don't know what you think you know. I know you've been accepting consulting fees from Pinnacle while sitting on our board. I know you've shared confidential financial information with their executives. I know you've been actively working to undermine Ms. Grant's leadership. Margaret's voice was calm but lethal. What I don't know is whether you were involved in the arson. That's for the authorities to determine. But your time on this board is over, effective immediately. Security will escort you out. 2 guards appeared at the door as if summoned. Barrows looked around the table, seeing no support, no sympathy. This is illegal termination. You'll hear from my lawyers. I'm sure we will. They can contact our legal department. Margaret nodded to the guards, and they escorted Barrows out. His protests echoed down the hall until a door closed, cutting them off abruptly. The remaining board members sat in stunned silence. Finally, Patricia Okonkwo spoke. Well, that was dramatic. Margaret, did you really know for 6 weeks? I had suspicions for longer, concrete evidence for 6 weeks. Margaret looked at Isabella. I apologize for not bringing this to you sooner. I wanted to be absolutely certain before making such a serious allegation. Corporate espionage is difficult to prove. Is Pinnacle behind the fire? Isabella asked. I don't have proof of that, but Thomas's involvement with them establishes a pattern of aggressive behavior. The authorities are investigating. Margaret folded her hands on the table. Now, setting aside that mess, let's return to Project Phoenix. I've reviewed the test results and I'm impressed. But Thomas raised a valid concern, even if his motives were corrupt. We need field testing, real-world applications. Ms. Grant, what's your timeline? Isabella exhaled slowly, composure returning. 6 months for initial field trials. We have relationships with fire departments in 3 cities willing to test prototypes. Another 6 months to refine based on their feedback. Then we can begin production. And if the field trials fail? Then we shut it down, Isabella said, the words clearly painful. If it doesn't work in real-world conditions, it doesn't work. But I believe it will. Because it's not just technology anymore. It's technology that understands people. Margaret looked at Ryan. Mr. Cole, you've been quiet during all of this drama. Do you believe Project Phoenix will succeed? Every eye in the room turned to him. Ryan thought about the miniature house, about smoke and fire and split-second decisions. He thought about his son, about teaching him that building things that mattered was worth the risk. He thought about Isabella's father running back into a burning house for a scared cat because that's what decent people did. Yes, he said simply, because it's not about perfect technology. It's about giving people like firefighters and fathers the best chance to do their jobs and come home alive. That's worth 6 months of field testing. That's worth the risk. Patricia smiled. Well said. I vote we approve the field testing phase, 6 months with monthly progress reports. If results are promising, we move to production. If not, we shut down the project with no recriminations. One by one, the other board members voted. The two loyal to Isabella voted yes immediately. The undecided board members looked at each other, then both voted yes. With Barrows gone, the vote was unanimous. Margaret stood, signaling the meeting's end. Ms. Grant, you have your 6 months. Don't waste them. Mr. Cole, it was interesting to meet you. Perhaps there's something to this idea of bringing fresh eyes to old problems. As the board filed out, Isabella sagged slightly, the adrenaline draining. We did it. You did it, Ryan corrected. I just sat there looking confused. You gave them something to believe in. That's more than data and projections. That's hope. She looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Thank you, Ryan. Again. They left the boardroom together, walking through the executive floor where assistants pretended not to stare. In the elevator, finally alone, Isabella leaned against the wall and closed her eyes. I thought I was going to lose everything today, she admitted quietly. The company, Phoenix, all of it, and then Margaret exposed Barrows, and suddenly I have 6 months to prove this works. You'll prove it. We'll prove it, she corrected, opening her eyes. You're part of this now, for better or worse. The elevator doors opened onto the lobby. Outside, the city continued its normal rhythm. People walking, cars passing, life happening everywhere. Ryan thought about his own small life, his house on Maple Street, his job at the auto shop. All of it waiting for him, unchanged. Except he had changed, and he couldn't go back to pretending he hadn't. Isabella, he said as they reached the exit. That night in the fire, when you woke up on the lawn, what did you say? I saw your lips move, but I couldn't hear you. She stopped, her hand on the door. For a moment, she didn't answer. Then, so quietly he almost didn't hear. I said, please don't let me have survived this for nothing. I thought I was dying, and all I could think was that my father had died saving me, and if I died now, his sacrifice would have been meaningless. But then I realized I wasn't dying. You'd saved me, and I had to figure out what to do with this second chance. Have you figured it out? I'm starting to. She looked at him with those intelligent, haunted eyes. I think maybe it's this, building something that saves lives, working with someone who reminds me why it matters, actually living instead of just surviving. They walked out into the afternoon sun, and Ryan felt the weight of everything that had happened settle on his shoulders. The fire, the rescue, the threats, the board meeting. All of it had led here, to this moment, standing outside a building where decisions worth millions of dollars were made every day. His phone rang. Torres. From the house. Ryan, it's Liam. He's fine, don't panic, but he's asking for you. He had a nightmare about the fire, woke up scared. I think he needs his dad. Ryan's heart clenched. I'm coming. 20 minutes. He hung up and turned to Isabella. I have to go. Liam needs me. Of course, go. She touched his arm briefly. Ryan, what you said in there about being a dad first, that's why this is going to work. Because you never forget what actually matters. Torres was waiting with the car. During the drive back to the house, Ryan thought about Liam scared and asking for him, about being the kind of father who came when called, who made his son feel safe even when the world was dangerous and confusing. That mattered more than board meetings or billion-dollar projects or any of it, but maybe, just maybe, he could do both. Maybe he could be a good father and also build something meaningful. Maybe those things weren't contradictory. Maybe they were the same thing looked at from different angles. At the house, he found Liam curled up on the couch, pale and shaky. Ryan sat beside him and pulled him close, feeling the small body press against his side, seeking comfort and safety. "Tell me about the nightmare," Ryan said softly. "You were in the fire again. But this time you didn't come out. I kept waiting and waiting, but you never came out." Liam's voice was small, scared. "And I was alone." Ryan held him tighter. "I did come out, buddy. I came out and I'm right here. You're not alone. But what if next time you don't? What if you help that lady with her project and something bad happens? What if Mr. Hoffman comes back?" These were reasonable fears, rational fears. Ryan couldn't promise nothing bad would happen. He couldn't guarantee absolute safety. Life didn't work that way, as Sarah's sudden death had proven. "I can't promise nothing bad will ever happen," Ryan said honestly. "But I can promise that I will always do everything in my power to come home to you. And I can promise that what I'm doing with Isabella matters. We're building something that will help protect people, help make sure other dads make it home to their kids. Doesn't that seem worth it?" Liam thought about this, his child's mind wrestling with complex ideas. "Is that why you went into the fire? To make sure other people's dads come home?" "No, I went into the fire because someone needed help, and I could give it. But now with Phoenix, we can help even more people. We can make the tools that keep firefighters and families safe. That's a different kind of helping, but it's just as important." "Okay," Liam said finally. "But Dad, can we maybe help people with things that aren't on fire? Like, I don't know, building playgrounds or something?" Despite everything, Ryan laughed. "Yeah, buddy. After this, we'll stick to helping with non-burning things. Promise." They sat together on the couch, father and son, while outside the guards patrolled and the world continued its complicated dance of danger and beauty. Ryan thought about the next 6 months, about field trials and refinements and proving Phoenix worked, about keeping his son safe while building something meaningful, about honoring Sarah's memory by actually living instead of just carefully surviving. His phone buzzed, a text from Isabella. "How's Liam?" "Better. Scared, but better. How are you?" "Terrified, hopeful, grateful. All of it at once. Get some rest, Ryan. 6 months starts tomorrow." 6 months to change everything. 6 months to prove that a mechanic's intuition could save lives. 6 months to show that sometimes the bravest thing wasn't running into fires. It was staying the course when everything got complicated and scary and real. Ryan looked down at his son, now drowsy against his shoulder, and made a silent promise to him and to Sarah and to himself. He would see this through. He would help Isabella build something meaningful. And he would make sure that Liam grew up seeing that his father was someone who kept his promises, who helped people, who made the world a little bit better. Even if it scared him. Even if it was hard. Especially because it was hard. Because that's what fathers did. That's what decent people did. They showed up. They did the work. They built things that mattered. And sometimes, if they were very lucky, they found themselves surrounded by people doing the same thing. The 6 months became a blur of early mornings and late nights, of Ryan splitting himself between two worlds that should have been impossible to bridge. 3 days a week, he worked at Grant Dynamics, sitting in on engineering meetings where people threw around terms like thermal imaging arrays and predictive algorithm modeling, while he tried to translate everything back into human terms. The other days, he returned to Martinez Auto Shop, his hands remembering the familiar weight of wrenches and the smell of engine oil, keeping himself grounded in the life he'd built before everything changed. Liam adapted with the resilience of children. They'd moved back to the house on Maple Street after 2 weeks, once the police confirmed that Barrows had been working alone and Pinnacle had backed off after the exposure. But things were different now. Security cameras watched their street. Torres still checked in daily. And sometimes Ryan would catch his son watching him with an expression that was too old, too knowing, the look of a child who'd learned that safety was always conditional. It was December now, 3 months into the field trials, and the results were better than anyone had dared hope. The fire departments in Chicago, Seattle, and Austin had installed Phoenix prototypes in select residential areas, neighborhoods that had high fire rates but couldn't afford the luxury fire suppression systems that protected wealthy districts. The data coming back was remarkable. Response times averaging 4.2 seconds. 0 deaths in homes with the system installed, a 94% reduction in property damage from fires that did occur. But the real stories were in the details, in the lives that showed up as statistics in Dr. Kim's reports. Like the family in Chicago's South Side, a mother, 3 kids, and an elderly grandmother who'd survived a space heater fire at 2 a.m. because Phoenix had detected the smoke before they'd even smelled it, had guided them out with sequential lighting, had contained the blaze to a single room. Or the veteran in Seattle who'd fallen asleep smoking, whose life was saved by the system's ability to differentiate between cigarette smoke and mattress fire, responding with enough force to suppress the flames, but gentle enough not to traumatize someone already struggling with PTSD. Ryan had read every incident report, had memorized the names and stories. They weren't just data points to him. They were proof that sometimes crazy ideas worked, that sometimes a mechanic's intuition about how people actually lived could save lives just as surely as running into burning buildings. Isabella had been right there beside him the entire time, working herself to exhaustion, her armor cracking more with each passing week. She'd started calling him late at night again, not to discuss business, but just to talk. About the pressure from the board, about her fears that Phoenix would fail, about the memories of her father that surfaced every time they reviewed another successful save. Ryan found himself looking forward to those calls, found himself opening up about things he'd kept locked away since Sarah died. The loneliness, the fear of failing Liam, the strange guilt of surviving when his wife hadn't. They were becoming friends, he realized. Real friends, despite the impossible gulf of wealth and status between them. And maybe something more than friends, though neither of them had acknowledged it, as if speaking it aloud would shatter whatever delicate thing was building between them. It was a Tuesday evening, bitter cold with snow threatening, when everything shifted again. Ryan was at the facility, watching Dr. Kim run simulations for a presentation to the board scheduled for next week, when Isabella's assistant Sarah Chen appeared at the lab door, her usually composed face tight with worry. "Ryan? Isabella needs you in her office, now." The urgency in her voice sent Ryan's heart racing. He followed her through the building to the executive floor to Isabella's office, a space he'd only been in once, surprised by how modest it was compared to what he'd expected. No ostentatious displays of wealth, just clean lines and family photos and a worn leather chair that had clearly been her father's. Isabella stood at the window overlooking the city, her posture rigid. When she turned, Ryan saw something in her face that scared him more than Hoffman's threats had. This was devastation, barely contained. "Margaret called," Isabella said, her voice hollow. "There was a fire in Austin last night, one of the houses with our system." Ryan's stomach dropped. "Did Phoenix fail?" "No, it worked perfectly. The family got out safely, the fire was contained, everyone survived." She closed her eyes. "But the house that burned? It wasn't random. Someone set it deliberately, used an accelerant that our system wasn't programmed to detect. And they left a message spray-painted on the garage door. This is just the beginning." The words hung in the air like poison. Ryan felt the room tilt slightly, reality rearranging itself around this new, terrible information. Someone deliberately set fire to a house with a family inside just to send you a message? To intimidate us, to show that Phoenix can be beaten, to make people afraid to install it. Isabella's hands were shaking. "Ryan, there were children in that house. A 7-year-old girl and her baby brother. They could have died because someone wanted to hurt me." Ryan crossed to her, taking her shoulders gently, making her look at him. "But they didn't die. The system worked. The family is safe. That's what matters. For now. But what about next time? What if whoever did this figures out how to override Phoenix completely? What if they set a fire the system can't detect or suppress?" Her voice broke. "I thought I was building something to save lives. What if I've just painted targets on innocent people?" "Hey, listen to me." Ryan kept his voice steady, even though his own fear was screaming. "You didn't paint targets on anyone. Whoever did this, they're responsible for their own actions, not you. And we're going to find them and stop them before they can hurt anyone else." "How? The police in Austin have no leads, no witnesses, professional arson they're calling it. Could be anyone." Ryan thought fast, his mind racing through possibilities. "It's not anyone. It's someone with access to information about the field trial locations. Someone who knows which houses have the system installed. That's a pretty small list. Isabella's eyes widened. The field trial data is confidential. Only people inside Grant Dynamics or the participating fire departments should have that information. And Barrows is in jail awaiting trial, so either he leaked it before he was arrested, or there's someone else inside your company working against you. The implications settled over them like a weight. Isabella pulled away, pacing to her desk, her CEO mind already working through the problem. I need to call Margaret. We'll audit everyone with access to the field trial data. Internal investigation, full security review. If there's another leak, we'll find it. And in the meantime? In the meantime, we increase security at all the field trial locations. I'll hire private protection for the families, coordinate with local police. Whatever it takes to keep people safe. She looked at Ryan, vulnerability showing through the cracks in her armor. I can't let anyone else get hurt because of me. I can't, Ryan. He wanted to comfort her, wanted to promise that everything would be okay, but he'd learned that hollow promises help no one. Then we'll make sure they don't. Together. The next week was a nightmare of investigations and security protocols and media management. The Austin fire had hit the news, local at first, but then picked up nationally when someone leaked that it involved the controversial new fire suppression system from Grant Dynamics. The headlines were brutal. Miracle fire system targeted by arsonist, and tech CEO's innovation becomes terror target. And worst of all, are smart fire systems making homes less safe? The board emergency meeting was contentious. Two of the members wanted to shut down the field trials immediately, citing liability concerns and reputational damage. Margaret and Patricia argued for continuing, pointing out that pulling the systems now would leave families vulnerable and would essentially let the terrorists win. Ryan sat quietly, watching Isabella hold her ground against people who commanded billions, watched her refuse to back down even as the pressure mounted. We don't even know who did this, one board member argued. It could be Pinnacle, it could be a competitor, it could be some anti-technology extremist. Until we know, we're exposing both the company and innocent families to danger. So we should abandon the families who are relying on Phoenix? Isabella's voice was ice. Explain to them that we're removing their protection because protecting them became inconvenient for our liability insurance. That's not fair. Nothing about this is fair, Isabella cut him off. But we have an obligation to the people we convinced to trust us. We told them Phoenix would keep them safe. I'm not pulling it now because someone made a threat. That's exactly what they want. For us to fail, for fear to win. Margaret intervened before the argument could escalate further. We'll vote. All in favor of continuing the field trials with enhanced security measures? The vote split 4-3 in favor of continuing. It was enough, barely. But Ryan could see the toll it took on Isabella. The knowledge that half her board had been willing to abandon the project, that she'd won by the narrowest possible margin. After the meeting, Isabella disappeared into her office and didn't come out for hours. Ryan waited, unsure if he should leave or stay, finally deciding to just sit in the hallway outside like some kind of guard. When she finally emerged near midnight, her eyes were red and her carefully maintained composure had shattered completely. Come on, Ryan said gently. I'm driving you home. I should stay. There's work. The work will be there tomorrow. You need sleep. She didn't argue, just followed him to his truck. The modest, slightly beat-up vehicle looking absurd in the executive parking garage surrounded by luxury cars. But she climbed in without comment, sinking into the passenger seat with exhaustion that went beyond physical. They drove in silence through the city, past the late-night diners and closed shops, past the neighborhoods where families slept peacefully, unaware of the corporate battles being fought over their safety. Finally, Isabella spoke. My father used to say that doing the right thing never feels the way you expect it to. That it's not heroic or satisfying. It's just hard and scary and you do it anyway because the alternative is worse. She looked out the window. I never really understood what he meant until now. I thought building Phoenix would feel noble. Instead, it just feels terrifying. That's how I felt running into that fire, Ryan admitted. Everyone called me a hero after, but in the moment, I was just absolutely, completely terrified. Thought I was going to die. Thought I was going to leave Liam alone. but I couldn't live with myself if I didn't try. Do you regret it? Knowing everything that's happened since? Ryan thought about the question seriously. The burns that had taken weeks to heal, the threats from Hoffman, the late nights and stress and fear for Liam's safety, the way his simple life had become infinitely more complicated. No, he said finally, because on the other side of all that fear and complication, there's you, there's Phoenix, there's families in Chicago and Seattle and Austin who are alive because we didn't give up. That's worth being scared for. Isabella turned to look at him, really look at him, and Ryan felt something shift in the air between them. How do you do that? Stay so certain when everything's falling apart. I'm not certain. I'm terrified most of the time. But I've got Liam watching me, learning how to be a man from what I do. So I can't fall apart. I have to keep going, keep believing it matters, because he needs to see that the world rewards decency, even when it feels like it doesn't. That's a lot of pressure for one person. Yeah. Ryan smiled despite himself. But you know what? I don't think I'm carrying it alone anymore. He pulled up to Isabella's house. Not the craftsman retreat where he and Liam had stayed, but her primary residence, a beautiful modern home in an upscale neighborhood. Security lights blazed across the property. Cameras tracked their arrival. Even here, safety was a carefully maintained illusion. Isabella didn't immediately get out. She sat with her hand on the door handle, not moving, clearly working through something in her mind. Finally, would you like to come in? Just for a minute? I know it's late, but I don't want to be alone right now. The vulnerability in her voice made Ryan's chest ache. Sure. Let me text Mrs. Chen. Let her know I'll be a little later. Isabella's house was as beautiful inside as out, all clean lines and warm wood and art that probably cost more than Ryan's entire house. But there were personal touches too, photos of her father in his firefighter gear, a worn baseball glove in a display case, books piled on every surface, half read and clearly loved. Coffee, Isabella offered, already moving to the kitchen. Or something stronger? Coffee's good. She made it with the kind of precise, practiced movements of someone who did this every night, who found comfort in the ritual. They sat at her kitchen island, expensive cups of excellent coffee between them, the silence comfortable now instead of awkward. Can I ask you something personal? Isabella said after a while. Sure. Your wife, Sarah. How did you know it was okay to let someone else in after she died? How did you know you weren't betraying her memory? The question caught Ryan off guard. He thought about it carefully, wanting to give her an honest answer. I don't know that I did know. For a long time I was just surviving, getting through each day for Liam, not really living. And then I met you, and suddenly I was doing more than surviving. I was building something, believing in something, feeling things I hadn't felt in years, and I realized that Sarah would be angry if I spent the rest of my life in that grief prison. She'd want me to live, to be happy, to find purpose again. But how do you know? Because I knew her, and she was generous and loving, and she wanted good things for me, even after she was gone. Ryan met Isabella's eyes. Your father ran back into a burning building for a cat. A cat, Isabella. You know what that tells me? That he was someone who believed every life mattered, who couldn't stand by when something needed saving. Do you really think someone like that would want you to spend your whole life alone, afraid to let anyone close because you might lose them too? Tears spilled down her cheeks, the first time Ryan had seen her really cry. I've been so alone. Building the company, fighting the board, trying to prove I was worthy of his sacrifice. And I thought that's what I was supposed to do. Be strong, be invincible, never need anyone. But I'm so tired, Ryan. I'm so tired of being alone. Ryan moved around the island, wrapping her in a careful hug, feeling her shake with sobs she'd probably been holding back for years. He didn't say anything, just held her, let her cry out the fear and loneliness and pressure that had been building since that night in the fire. When she finally pulled back, wiping her eyes, she laughed shakily. I'm sorry. That was completely unprofessional. Good thing we're not at the office then. She smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. Thank you for being here, for not running away when things got complicated and dangerous, for reminding me why any of this matters. Isabella, I know. I know this is complicated. You're technically a consultant for my company. There are power dynamics and professional ethics and 1,000 reasons why this, she gestured between them, shouldn't happen. But I need you to know that I care about you, as more than a colleague, as more than the man who saved my life, as Ryan, as yourself. Ryan's heart hammered in his chest. He thought about Liam, about what it would mean to bring someone new into their lives. He thought about the danger that still surrounded them, the investigations ongoing, the unknown arsonist still out there. He thought about all the very reasonable reasons to keep this professional, to maintain boundaries, to not complicate things further. Then he thought about Sarah, about the way she'd lived fully and loved fearlessly and never let fear stop her from reaching for what she wanted. I care about you too, he said quietly. And yeah, it's complicated, but I'm starting to think complicated is just how my life works now. Isabella laughed, the sound bright and unexpected in the late-night kitchen. So what do we do about it? I guess we take it slow, figure it out as we go. No rush, no pressure, just see what happens. Ryan smiled. Though I should probably warn you, I'm a package deal. Liam comes with me and he's got opinions about everything. I like Liam. He's smart and funny and he's got the best dad in the world. Careful, that kind of talk will give me a big head. Good, you could use a little ego. You're too humble for your own good. They talked for another hour, the conversation wandering from serious to silly and back again. Isabella told him about growing up with her father, about the pressure of building Grant Dynamics, about the loneliness of being at the top with no one to share it with. Ryan told her about Sarah's death, about the early days of single fatherhood when he'd barely kept his head above water, about the strange guilt of surviving when someone you loved didn't. It was nearly 3 a.m. when Ryan finally left, driving home through empty streets, his mind buzzing with everything that had happened. He felt lighter somehow, as if acknowledging what was growing between him and Isabella had lifted a weight he hadn't realized he was carrying. At home, Mrs. Chen was asleep on the couch, waking immediately when he came in. Everything okay? Yeah. Better than okay, actually. Ryan helped her gather her things. Sorry it's so late. Romance takes time, she said with a knowing smile. That woman is good for you, makes you remember you're more than just Liam's father. How did you? I have eyes, Ryan, and I've known you for 8 years. I see how you look at her. Mrs. Chen patted his cheek affectionately. Your Sarah would approve. That girl needs someone who sees her as a person, not a bank account. You're good for each other. After she left, Ryan checked on Liam, fast asleep, looking young and peaceful in the glow of his nightlight before collapsing into his own bed. His phone buzzed with a text from Isabella. Thank you for tonight, for everything. Sleep well. He typed back. You too. We've got this. Together. The investigation into the Austin fire took 3 weeks to crack. It wasn't another insider at Grant Dynamics, as they'd feared. It was someone from Pinnacle Development, not Gerald Hoffman, who was maintaining his innocence from behind bars, but a mid-level manager who'd decided to take matters into his own hands. The man confessed to setting the fire, thinking he was protecting his company and his job by discrediting Phoenix. The relief Ryan felt was immense. It was over. The threat was contained. They could move forward without looking over their shoulders constantly. But the damage had been done. The Austin fire had made national news, and even with the arsonist caught, public opinion was divided. Some people saw Phoenix as a miracle technology worth investing in. Others saw it as a target, something that made homes less safe rather than more. The board was nervous. Investors were asking questions. Everything they'd built over 6 months was hanging by a thread. The final presentation to the board was scheduled for a cold January afternoon, 6 months to the day after they'd gotten approval for the field trials. This time, Ryan wasn't just observing. He was presenting alongside Isabella and Dr. Kim, showing the board not just data, but stories, the faces and names of people who were alive because Phoenix had worked. The boardroom was packed. All 7 members were there, plus investors, plus media representatives who'd been invited to witness what Isabella had promised would be a major announcement. Ryan's hands shook as he stood at the podium, looking out at all these powerful people whose decisions would determine whether their work had mattered. My name is Ryan Cole, he began, his voice steadier than he felt. 6 months ago, I was just a mechanic who happened to pull someone from a fire. I didn't know anything about advanced technology or corporate strategy. I still don't, really, but I know about people. And I know that every number in Dr. Kim's data represents a real person, someone's parent or child or friend who got to wake up this morning because Phoenix worked. He clicked to the first slide, a photo of Maria Santos and her 3 children, the family from Chicago's South Side. This is Maria, single mother, works 2 jobs to keep her family fed. She installed Phoenix because it was free through the field trial program, and she'd always been terrified of house fires. On November 23rd at 2:17 a.m., a space heater in her bedroom malfunctioned. Phoenix detected the smoke formation before it was visible, activated the alarm, and guided her family out using sequential lighting. The fire suppressed before it could spread beyond one room. Without Phoenix, the fire department estimates they would have had maybe 2 minutes to evacuate before the smoke became lethal. Maria told me that Phoenix gave her family a future. That's not just data, that's everything. He went through 5 more stories. The veteran in Seattle, an elderly couple in Austin, a family with a disabled child in Chicago. Each one a life saved, a disaster averted. Proof that what they'd built actually worked in the real world. When he finished, the boardroom was silent. Margaret Chen had tears in her eyes. Even the skeptical investors looked moved. Isabella stood, taking her place at the podium. 6 months ago, you gave me a chance to prove that Project Phoenix was more than just expensive idealism. Today, I can tell you that it works. 94% reduction in fire deaths in homes where it's installed. 97% reduction in property damage. Response times that beat every competing system on the market. And most importantly, real human beings who are alive because we didn't give up. She clicked to a new slide, a production timeline and pricing structure. We're ready to move to full-scale production. We have manufacturing partners lined up, distribution agreements with major home builders, and interest from insurance companies willing to subsidize installation costs. But more than that, we have something no other company can offer. We have technology that thinks about people first, that was built by a team that includes mechanics and engineers and everyone in between. We have technology with a soul. Patricia Okonkwo raised her hand. Ms. Grant, the arson incident in Austin, how do we address concerns that Phoenix makes homes targets? By being honest, Isabella said firmly. Yes, someone tried to discredit our system. And yes, Phoenix couldn't detect a sophisticated accelerant it hadn't been programmed to recognize. But the system still worked, the family still survived, and we've now updated the detection algorithms to recognize that accelerant and hundreds of others. We made Phoenix stronger because someone tried to break it. That's how innovation works, not in laboratories, but in the real world where things go wrong and we adapt. The board members exchanged glances. Margaret stood. I've seen enough. All in favor of moving Project Phoenix to full production? 7 hands raised. Unanimous. The room erupted in applause. Investors were already pulling out phones, making calls. Media representatives were typing furiously. And Isabella just stood there looking stunned, as if she'd expected failure right up until the moment of success. Ryan caught her eye across the room and smiled. They'd done it. Against corporate sabotage and arson and doubt and fear, they'd actually done it. After the presentation, after the congratulations and the media interviews and the celebration champagne, Isabella found Ryan in the hallway outside the boardroom. Without a word, she hugged him, fierce and grateful and joyful. We did it, she whispered. Ryan, we actually did it. You did it. I just asked stupid questions. You did so much more than that. She pulled back, looking at him with an expression that made his heart race. You gave me a reason to keep fighting. You reminded me what it was all for. You saved my life twice, once in that fire, and once by showing me how to live again. Around them, people were celebrating, but Ryan barely noticed. It was just him and Isabella standing in a hallway in a building where they'd spent 6 months building something impossible, looking at each other and seeing possibility. So what happens now? Ryan asked. Now we go into production. We hire more staff, we change building codes and insurance policies, and make Phoenix standard in every new home in America. Isabella smiled. And maybe, if you're interested, you could come work for me full-time. Not as a consultant, as a partner. Vice President of Human-Centered Design, or whatever title you want. Ryan laughed. That's quite a promotion from auto mechanic. You're not just an auto mechanic. You're someone who understands how technology needs to serve people, not the other way around. I need that perspective in my company. I need you. Can I think about it? Talk to Liam? Of course. Take all the time you need. Isabella squeezed his hand. But Ryan, however you answer, I hope you know that us working together, building something meaningful, it's been one of the best things in my life. Thank you. That night, Ryan sat with Liam at their kitchen table, eating pizza and trying to figure out how to explain that their lives were about to change again. So Isabella wants you to work for her all the time? Liam asked around a mouthful of pepperoni. Yeah, big job, good money, important work. Would we have to move? No, we'd stay right here. I'd just go to her office instead of the auto shop. Liam considered this seriously. Would you be happy? The question startled Ryan. What do you mean? You always look happy when you talk about Phoenix, about the people you're helping. You never look that happy fixing cars. Liam met his father's eyes. Mom always said you should do work that makes you excited to wake up in the morning. Does Phoenix do that? Ryan felt his throat tighten with emotion. 8 years old, and his son was already wiser than most adults. Yeah, buddy, it does. Then you should do it. Take the job. Help Isabella save more people. Liam grinned. Plus, she's pretty, and she likes you. And you like her. I'm not stupid, Dad. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just don't notice because you're busy being a hero. They laughed together, and Ryan felt something settle in his chest. The certainty that this was the right path, scary and uncertain and completely different from the safe life he'd been building. But right. He called Isabella that night after Liam had gone to bed. I talked to Liam, he said. He thinks I should take the job, says I look happy when I talk about Phoenix. Smart kid. He could hear the smile in her voice. So is that a yes? That's a yes, on one condition. Name it. We take this thing between us slow, really slow. Liam's been through a lot, and I won't bring someone into his life unless I'm sure it's serious and lasting. Can you be patient with that? Ryan, I've waited my whole life for someone who sees me as a person instead of a bank account. I can wait a little longer to do things right. She paused. But just so we're clear, I'm very serious about you, about us. I'm not going anywhere. Good. Neither am I. They talked for another hour, making plans for his transition to Grant Dynamics, discussing how to navigate the relationship without making it awkward for the team, dreaming about where Phoenix could go next. It felt natural, comfortable, like something they'd been doing for years instead of months. When Ryan finally hung up and got ready for bed, he caught his reflection in the bathroom mirror. He looked different than he had 6 months ago. Older maybe, but also more alive. There was light in his eyes that had been missing since Sarah died. Purpose. Hope. Future. He thought about that night in October, about seeing flames and making the split-second decision to run toward danger instead of away. About dragging Isabella from the fire and collapsing on the lawn, certain he'd just made a terrible mistake. That choice had changed everything, had brought danger and complication and fear into his carefully controlled life. But it had also brought meaning, purpose, connection, the chance to build something that would save lives for generations. And maybe, just maybe, it had brought love back into his life when he'd thought that door was closed forever. Ryan looked at his scarred hands, the burns mostly healed now but still visible as pale marks on his skin. Evidence of the price of running into fire. Evidence that some choices left permanent marks. But also evidence that he'd survived, that he'd pulled someone else through hell and come out the other side, that scars were proof of living, not dying. He turned off the light and climbed into bed, his phone showing a final text from Isabella. Thank you for saying yes. To all of it. Ryan smiled in the darkness and typed back, thank you for giving me something worth saying yes to. Outside, the winter wind rattled the windows. Down the hall, Liam slept peacefully. Somewhere in the city, Isabella was probably still awake, already planning the next phase of Phoenix, the next way to save lives. And in houses across 3 cities, families slept safely under the protection of technology that had been built by people who refused to give up. The fire that had brought them together had burned away everything inessential, leaving only what mattered: connection, purpose, the courage to keep building even when the world tried to tear it down. Ryan closed his eyes and let himself drift toward sleep, no longer afraid of what morning would bring. 6 months ago, he'd been just surviving. Now he was living, really, truly living. And for the first time since Sarah died, that felt like enough. Spring came slowly to the city, winter reluctant to release its grip. But by late March, the trees along Maple Street were beginning to bud, and Ryan found himself noticing the changing seasons in a way he hadn't in years. Life did that. Made you pay attention again, made you see beauty in ordinary things when you'd been sleepwalking through existence for so long. His office at Grant Dynamics was modest by executive standards, but it had a window overlooking the research lab where Dr. Kim's team continued refining Phoenix. Ryan liked watching them work, their intensity, their arguments, their occasional celebrations when a test exceeded expectations. He'd become fluent in their language now, could discuss thermal sensors and predictive algorithms without feeling completely lost. But his real value, everyone agreed, was still in asking the questions nobody else thought to ask. Like 2 weeks ago, when the team had been frustrated by Phoenix's performance in mobile homes. The system worked perfectly in traditional houses, but struggled in the lighter construction and different airflow patterns of manufactured housing. The engineers had spent months trying to adjust the sensors, assuming it was a technical problem. Ryan had spent an afternoon visiting mobile home parks, talking to residents, watching how they actually lived. He'd come back with a simple observation. Mobile homes moved. They settled, they shifted with temperature changes. They weren't as structurally rigid as traditional construction. Phoenix was trying to map a static environment that was actually dynamic. Dr. Kim's team had rebuilt their algorithms around that insight. Within a week, they'd solved the problem. Now Phoenix worked just as well in a trailer park as it did in a mansion, which meant they could protect the people who needed it most. The ones who couldn't afford expensive fire suppression systems, who lived in older buildings with outdated wiring and higher fire risk. Isabella had been right. Sometimes the solution wasn't more technology. Sometimes it was just understanding people better. His phone buzzed with a text from her. Board meeting ran late. Still coming to dinner? They'd been doing this for 3 months now. Careful, deliberate dates where they got to know each other without the pressure of work or crisis hanging over them. Movies and restaurants and long walks through the city. Conversations that lasted hours, ranging from silly to profound and back again. And always, they ended the evening with Isabella dropping Ryan at home, no matter how much they both wanted more. Because Liam came first. Because rushing would be a mistake. Because some things were worth doing right, even when it was hard. Ryan texted back. Already at the restaurant. Liam's with Mrs. Chen. Take your time. He was nursing his second coffee when Isabella finally arrived, looking harried and frustrated in a way that was becoming more common. The board was pushing her hard on expansion timelines, wanting to capitalize on Phoenix's success as quickly as possible. But Isabella refused to cut corners, refused to sacrifice quality for speed. It was creating tension. Sorry I'm late, she said, sliding into the booth across from him. Margaret wanted to argue about manufacturing costs. Again. How bad? She wants to source cheaper sensors from an overseas supplier. Says it'll cut production costs by 30%. Isabella's jaw was tight. I told her absolutely not. We tested those sensors. They fail twice as often. I'm not compromising Phoenix's reliability to improve our profit margins. Ryan reached across the table, taking her hand. You made the right call. I know, but it's exhausting, fighting this battle every single day. Sometimes I wonder if I'm just being stubborn. If maybe they're right, and I'm letting perfection become the enemy of good enough. You're letting standards prevent mediocrity. That's different. Ryan squeezed her hand. Phoenix saves lives because it doesn't cut corners. The second you start compromising, you start risking people's safety. Margaret knows that. She just wants to see if you'll blink first. Isabella smiled tiredly. When did you get so good at corporate politics? I've had an excellent teacher. They ordered dinner and deliberately steered the conversation away from work. Isabella told him about a documentary she'd watched about deep-sea exploration. Ryan told her about Liam's latest obsession with learning guitar, the terrible sounds coming from his bedroom at all hours. They laughed about Torres's ongoing attempts to teach the security team to appreciate jazz music, a crusade that was failing spectacularly. It felt normal, gloriously, wonderfully normal. Two people having dinner, getting to know each other, building something real away from the pressure and drama of their professional lives. But as they were finishing dessert, Isabella's expression turned serious. "Can I ask you something? And I need you to be completely honest." "Always." "Are you happy? Really happy? Not just with Phoenix or with work, but with all of this? With us taking it slow, with the secrecy, with keeping our relationship quiet at the office?" She looked down at her hands. "Because sometimes I worry that I'm asking too much. That you deserve someone less complicated, someone who doesn't come with billion-dollar companies and board meetings and constant pressure." Ryan took a moment to formulate his answer, wanting to get it right. "Do you know what I was doing this time last year? I was fixing Mrs. Patterson's Buick for the third time, eating frozen dinners, watching Liam do homework while I tried not to think about how lonely I was. I was surviving, Isabella, just getting through each day. And yeah, my life now is more complicated, but it's also more alive, more meaningful. Or I wake up excited to go to work. I come home with stories to tell Liam. And I get to spend time with someone who challenges me and inspires me and makes me want to be better than I am. But the slowness of it, the secrecy, is protecting something worth protecting," Ryan interrupted gently. "I don't want to be the VP who's dating the CEO. I don't want office gossip about whether I got my job through personal connections. And more than that, I need to know that what we're building is real before I bring Liam fully into it. He's already been through so much loss. I can't introduce him to someone who might not stay." "I'm staying," Isabella said fiercely. "Ryan, I need you to understand. I'm not going anywhere. This isn't casual for me. This isn't a phase or a distraction. You're—" She paused, seeming to gather courage. "You're the first person since my father died who's seen me as just Isabella. Not the CEO, not the billionaire, not the face of Grant Dynamics. Just me, and I love you for that. I'm in love with you." The words hung in the air between them, terrifying and exhilarating. Ryan's heart hammered against his ribs. He'd known, of course, had felt it building between them for months, but hearing it said aloud made it real in a way that was both wonderful and frightening. "I love you too," he said, the words coming easier than he'd expected. "I have for a while. I just didn't want to rush this, didn't want to push too hard too fast. But Isabella, I'm all in. Completely. Whenever you're ready to go public, to make this official, I'm ready too." Her eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "Really?" "Really. I think Liam's ready too. He asks about you constantly. Wants to know when you're coming to dinner, when he can show you his terrible guitar playing, when we can all watch movies together." Ryan grinned. "I think he's got a bit of a crush on you, honestly." Isabella laughed, wiping at her eyes. "Then maybe it's time we stopped hiding. Time we started building a real life together, all of us." They left the restaurant hand in hand, not caring who saw them, feeling lighter than they had in months. The spring air was cool but not cold, the city alive with people enjoying the evening. They walked without direction, just enjoying being together without the weight of secrecy. It was Isabella who spotted him first. Gerald Hoffman, standing on the corner with another man, both of them in expensive suits, both of them watching. Isabella's hand tightened in Ryan's, her whole body going tense. "We should go," she said quietly. But Hoffman had already seen them. He crossed the street with deliberate slowness, his companion following. Up close, Ryan could see that jail time hadn't been kind to him. He looked thinner, older, his expensive suit hanging a bit loose. "Ms. Grant," Hoffman said with poisonous politeness. "How nice to see you. I heard Phoenix got board approval. Congratulations." "What do you want, Gerald?" Isabella's voice was ice. "Just to deliver a message. The charges against me were dropped." "Insufficient evidence," the DA said. "Funny how that works when you have good lawyers." Hoffman smiled, showing teeth. "And Pinnacle is still very interested in acquiring Grant Dynamics. In fact, we're more interested than ever now that you've proven the technology works. We're prepared to make a very generous offer. Not interested. You should be, because the alternative is that we develop our own version of Phoenix. We've already filed patents on similar technology. We have engineers who've studied your system extensively. Hoffman's smile widened. Of course, they studied it during the field trials, when your security was so focused on outside threats that you didn't notice the ones already inside. Ryan felt Isabella trembling beside him, rage and fear warring in her. You had someone on the inside the whole time. I had someone very dedicated to Pinnacle's success, and while I was unfortunately detained, they were gathering very useful information. Technical specifications, algorithm details, manufacturing processes, everything we need to build our own system. Hoffman leaned in slightly. So here's your choice, Ms. Grant. Sell to us now at a premium price and walk away wealthy and intact. Or refuse, and watch us release a competing system that does everything Phoenix does, but cheaper and faster. Your board will lose faith, your investors will panic, and you'll lose everything you've built, including your precious company. That's theft, Ryan said, his voice low and dangerous. Industrial espionage. You're admitting to it right now. Am I? I'm simply discussing business possibilities. Hoffman looked at Ryan with contempt. The hero mechanic. Tell me, Mr. Cole, has Ms. Grant told you about the prenuptial agreement her lawyers are drafting? No? How interesting. Almost like she's planning for this relationship to end before it really begins. Ryan felt like he'd been punched. He looked at Isabella, saw the guilt flash across her face before she could hide it. Isabella? It's not... Ryan, it's just standard practice. My lawyers insist... Of course they do, Hoffman interrupted smoothly. Can't have the help thinking they're entitled to the real money. Must keep the class divisions clear. Get the hell away from us, Isabella snarled. Now, before I call the police. For what? Having a conversation on a public street? Hoffman stepped back, hands raised in mock surrender. Think about my offer, Ms. Grant. You have 1 week to decide. Sell to us or watch everything you've built crumble. Your choice. He walked away, his companion following. Ryan and Isabella stood frozen on the sidewalk, the evening that had been so perfect, now shattered into pieces. Ryan, Isabella started. Is it true? About the prenup? My lawyers draft them automatically for anyone I'm in a serious relationship with. It's just to protect the company, to make sure I can't take your money if things go wrong, Ryan finished, his voice flat. Jesus, Isabella. Were you ever going to tell me? Yes, of course. But I didn't want to ruin what we have with talk of legal documents, and you didn't trust me enough to be honest. Ryan pulled his hand from hers. You let me fall in love with you while your lawyers were already planning for the divorce. That's not fair. You know that's not what this is. I don't know what this is anymore. Ryan felt anger and hurt and betrayal churning in his chest. I thought we were building something real, something honest, but you were protecting yourself the whole time, making sure the poor mechanic couldn't get his hands on your billions. That is not... Ryan, please. Don't let Hoffman poison this. He's trying to drive us apart, to make you doubt me so he can get what he wants. He doesn't have to make me doubt you. You did that yourself by keeping this secret. Ryan started walking, needing distance, needing to think. I need some time. I need to figure out if this is real or if I'm just another business decision you're protecting yourself from. Ryan, wait. But he was already walking away, ignoring her calls, his mind spinning with hurt and confusion and anger. He'd thought they were past this, past the wealth gap, past the power dynamics, past all the complications that made their relationship difficult. He'd thought they were just Ryan and Isabella, two people building something real. But maybe Hoffman was right. Maybe he'd been naive to think a billionaire CEO could really see him as an equal. Maybe the prenup wasn't just legal protection. Maybe it was proof that Isabella had never really believed this would last. Ryan walked for hours, eventually ending up back at his house. Mrs. Chen was waiting on the porch, concern on her weathered face. Liam's asleep. But Ryan, what happened? You look like someone died. Just realized I've been an idiot, Ryan said, trying for a smile and failing. Thanks for watching him. After Mrs. Chen left, Ryan sat in the dark living room, phone in hand, staring at the texts from Isabella that kept arriving, each one more desperate than the last, trying to explain, trying to make him understand. But all he could think about was Hoffman's smug smile, his contempt, his certainty that Ryan would never really belong in Isabella's world. He fell asleep on the couch and woke to Liam shaking him, concerned. "Dad, are you okay? You're still wearing your clothes from yesterday." "Yeah, buddy, just a rough night." Ryan sat up, every muscle aching. "What time is it?" 8:30, and there's a lady at the door. The security lady, Torres. Ryan opened the door to find Torres looking grim. "Ryan, there's a situation at the facility. Isabella needs you there immediately. I'm not sure It's not about your relationship drama. It's about Phoenix." Torres's expression was deadly serious. "Someone broke into the lab last night, stole the prototype units and all the backup data. Everything's gone." The words took a moment to register. Then Ryan was moving, grabbing his keys, telling Liam to stay with Mrs. Chen, following Torres to the car. During the drive to Grant Dynamics, she filled him in. The break-in had been professional, sophisticated. They'd bypassed security, knew exactly where to find the prototypes, had wiped the servers clean. Everything Phoenix had become, everything they'd built, gone in a single night. Isabella was in the lab when Ryan arrived, surrounded by police and security personnel. She looked like she hadn't slept, her clothes rumpled, her face pale with exhaustion and fear. When she saw Ryan, relief flooded her expression. "Thank God. I thought you wouldn't come." "What happened?" Dr. Kim stepped forward, his face haggard. "They took everything. 3 prototype units, all our backup drives, even the paper documentation. And they corrupted our cloud backups, some kind of sophisticated malware that we didn't catch until it was too late. We have nothing, Ryan. 6 months of work, just gone." "Hoffman," Isabella said flatly. "He said we had a week to decide. This is him showing us what happens if we refuse to sell." Margaret Chen arrived with 2 other board members, all of them looking grim. "How bad is it?" "Complete loss," Isabella said, her voice eerily calm. "We can rebuild from the original algorithms, but it'll take months, maybe a year. And without the field trial data, we'll have to start testing from scratch. Phoenix is dead, Margaret. We've lost." "No," Ryan said sharply. Everyone turned to look at him. "We haven't lost. We've been robbed, but we haven't lost. Ryan, they took everything. They took the hardware and the data, but they didn't take what really matters." Ryan looked around the room at the exhausted engineers, at Isabella's defeated expression, at the empty spaces where the prototypes had been. They didn't take the knowledge. Dr. Kim and his team built those algorithms. They're still in their heads. And yeah, we lost the field trial data, but we know the system works. We have the published papers, the public reports. And we have something Hoffman and Pinnacle will never have. We understand why Phoenix works. Not just the how, but the why. That's not enough to... It's enough to start over, Ryan interrupted. It's enough to rebuild faster and better than before because we're not learning as we go this time. We know what works. We know the mistakes to avoid. And we know that people need this technology. He turned to Isabella. "You told me once that your father said doing the right thing never feels the way you expect. That it's just hard and scary, and you do it anyway. Well, this is hard and scary, but giving up, letting Hoffman win, that's worse." Isabella stared at him, something shifting in her expression. "You're right. God, you're right. We can rebuild. It'll be hell, but we can do it." "Actually, you can't," Margaret said quietly. "I'm sorry, Isabella, but the board won't approve more funding. Not after this. The security breach, the loss of proprietary technology, the theft. Our investors are going to panic. We need to cut our losses and move on." "Move on to what? Letting Hoffman release a stolen version of our technology?" "We'll sue them for patent infringement. We'll fight them in court. But Project Phoenix is over. I'm sorry, but that's the reality." The room fell silent. Ryan could see Isabella's world collapsing around her. The company her father had inspired, the technology that was supposed to save lives, everything she'd built for years, all of it slipping away because corporate politics and theft and bad luck had converged at the worst possible moment. Then Isabella did something Ryan didn't expect. She laughed. "You know what? Fine. The board doesn't want to fund Phoenix? Then I'll fund it myself. Margaret blinked. I'm sorry? I'll buy out the company's stake in Project Phoenix. I'll take the technology private, rebuild it with my own money, and bring it to market independently. Isabella's voice was steel. Grant Dynamics can focus on its other projects, but Phoenix is mine, and I'm not letting it die. Isabella, do you understand what you're saying? We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. I have hundreds of millions of dollars, and I'd rather spend them on something that matters than watch Hoffman turn my life's work into his profit center. Isabella looked around the room. Anyone who wants to come with me, engineers, staff, anyone who believes in what we're building. I'll match your current salary and give you equity in the new company. We'll be smaller, leaner, but we'll be doing the right thing. Dr. Kim raised his hand immediately. I'm in. One by one, other engineers joined him. The techs, the research assistants, even Torres stepped forward. I'm better at security than whatever clowns you had protecting this place. I'm in too. Within minutes, half the lab had pledged to follow Isabella. Margaret looked around in shock. You're all willing to leave stable jobs at an established company to chase this impossible dream? It's not impossible, Ryan said. It's just hard. But the best things usually are. Margaret sighed, rubbing her temples. Then I guess I'll have to come too. Someone needs to keep you from making completely reckless financial decisions. Isabella's eyes widened. Margaret, you're on the board of Grant Dynamics, and I'm 73 years old with more money than I know what to do with. I've been looking for something meaningful to do with my remaining years. Margaret smiled. Besides, your father was my friend. I owe it to his memory to help you finish what he started. The mood in the room shifted. What had been defeat transformed into defiant hope. They were going to do this. They were actually going to walk away from the established company and build something new from scratch. But first, Ryan needed to talk to Isabella. He pulled her aside, away from the planning chaos. I'm sorry. About last night. About assuming the worst instead of giving you a chance to explain. You had every right to be upset. I should have told you about the prenup. Should have trusted you to understand that it was just legal protection, not a statement about our relationship. Hoffman got in my head. Made me doubt everything. Ryan took her hands. But watching you just now, watching you risk everything for something you believe in, that's who you are. That's the person I fell in love with, not the CEO or the billionaire. The person who runs toward what matters, even when it's terrifying. I need you to know something, Isabella said, her voice shaking slightly. When I rebuild Phoenix, I want you as a full partner, not an employee, not a consultant, an equal owner of the company. Because you're right that there's a wealth gap between us. But this, Phoenix, what we're building, this is ours together, and I want that to be official. Isabella, I can't afford to invest. Your investment isn't money, it's everything you've already given. The insights, the human perspective, the courage to keep fighting when everything falls apart. She squeezed his hands. Please, Ryan, be my partner in this, in all of it. The company, the work, the life we're building, all of it. Ryan looked at this woman who'd risked everything for a dream, who'd walked away from security to chase something meaningful, who'd chosen principle over profit at every turn. He thought about Liam, about teaching his son what mattered, and he knew there was only one answer. Okay, partners, in everything. They kissed there in the hallway, not caring who saw, sealing the promise with the kind of certainty that only came from surviving the fire together. The next 3 months were the hardest of Ryan's life. Isabella had been serious about rebuilding from scratch. She bought a smaller facility across town, hired back everyone who'd followed her, and poured money into equipment and development at a pace that made accountants weep. Ryan worked 80-hour weeks, splitting time between engineering meetings and legal battles, and the constant grinding work of building a company from nothing. Hoffman and Pinnacle sued, claiming ownership of the Phoenix technology. Isabella countersued for theft and industrial espionage. The legal battle became a public spectacle, with media coverage of every filing, every motion, every dramatic courtroom exchange. Public opinion divided sharply. Some people saw Isabella as a heroic entrepreneur fighting corporate thieves. Others saw her as a stubborn billionaire refusing to accept defeat. But through it all, the work continued. Dr. Kim's team rebuilt the algorithms from memory and notes, improving them along the way. They ran new tests, documented everything meticulously, began applying for patents that would protect their innovations. The new Phoenix was better than the old one, faster, more accurate, more adaptable. And this time, when they needed field trial locations, hundreds of families volunteered. The story had caught the public imagination. The CEO who'd walked away from her company to protect her vision, the mechanic turned entrepreneur who'd saved her from a fire and then helped her build something meaningful. People wanted to be part of it. Ryan barely saw Liam during those months. He missed baseball games and parent-teacher conferences and ordinary evenings at home. The guilt gnawed at him constantly. But whenever he tried to apologize, Liam would just smile and say, "It's okay, Dad. You're saving lives. That's more important than my science fair project." His son's understanding made him feel worse, not better. It was late June, nearly 8 months after the theft, when everything came together at once. The patents were approved. The lawsuit was settled. Pinnacle agreed to pay damages and admit wrongdoing in exchange for avoiding criminal charges. And most importantly, the new Phoenix system passed every test with results that exceeded even the original prototype. They held a small celebration at the facility, the team that had stuck with Isabella through everything. Torres provided champagne that was probably too expensive for Ryan to comprehend. Dr. Kim gave a speech about the importance of never giving up on good ideas. Margaret toasted to the power of stubbornness and vision combined. And Isabella, standing with Ryan's hand in hers, announced that Phoenix Technology Inc. was ready to begin production and installation. That they had agreements with 3 major home builders, support from insurance companies, and interest from fire departments across the country. That they'd taken the worst thing that could happen and turned it into the best version of their vision. None of this would have happened without Ryan Cole, Isabella said, looking at him with love and pride. He saved my life that night in October. But more than that, he saved Phoenix by refusing to let me give up. By reminding me that the hard things are usually the right things. So this success isn't mine. It's ours. All of ours. The team applauded. Ryan felt his face flush with embarrassment and gratitude. This wasn't the life he'd imagined a year ago, fixing cars and counting pennies and just trying to survive. This was something bigger, something that mattered. After the celebration wound down, Isabella drove Ryan home in her new car. Nothing ostentatious, just a reliable sedan because she'd spent most of her liquid assets on rebuilding Phoenix, and practicality had become important again. They sat in his driveway, neither wanting the evening to end. "I have something for you," Isabella said, reaching into the back seat. She pulled out a small box, wrapped simply. "Open it." Inside was a gear from the original Phoenix prototype, one that had somehow survived the theft, probably because it was sitting on a shelf as a decoration rather than in the lab. It had been mounted in a glass frame with a small plaque that read, "Some fires burn to make room for something stronger." "I said that to you once, remember? That first time we talked after you turned down the money." Isabella's voice was soft. "I've been carrying this around for months, waiting for the right moment to give it to you. Because it's true, Ryan. The fire that brought us together, the theft that destroyed everything, all the struggles and fights and obstacles, they burned away everything that didn't matter. And what's left is stronger than what we started with." Ryan couldn't speak around the lump in his throat. He just pulled her close, holding her in the front seat of her practical sedan, thinking about how far they'd come. From strangers to partners to something that felt like forever. "Move in with us," he said suddenly, the words surprising even himself. "You and me and Liam, a real family, not just phone calls and stolen evenings. What do you think?" Isabella pulled back to look at him, eyes wide. "Are you sure? That's a big step." "I've never been more sure of anything. We're already partners in Phoenix. Let's be partners in everything else too. Liam loves you, I love you, and I'm tired of ending every evening by watching you drive away." "Then yes, absolutely yes." She kissed him, laughing. "Though I should warn you, I'm terrible at domestic things. I'll burn dinner and forget to do laundry and probably drive you crazy within a week." "Good thing I'm used to chaos then." They went inside together, and Ryan woke Liam up despite the late hour because some news couldn't wait until morning. His son's sleepy face broke into a huge grin when they told him Isabella would be moving in. "Finally," Liam said. I've been waiting forever for you guys to figure this out. When did you get so smart? Ryan asked, ruffling his hair. I told you, I've always been smart. You just don't notice. They made hot chocolate and sat around the kitchen table, the three of them, planning what Isabella's room would look like and where her books would fit and whether they needed to get a bigger TV. Normal, domestic, ordinary planning that felt extraordinary because it meant they were choosing this. Choosing to be a family. Later, after Liam had gone back to bed and Isabella was getting ready to leave one last time, Ryan walked her to her car. The summer night was warm and full of crickets, the kind of evening that felt eternal. Thank you, Isabella said quietly, for everything. For saving my life, for believing in Phoenix, for not giving up on me even when I gave you every reason to. You changed everything, Ryan. You know that? You changed everything for me too. Made me remember how to live instead of just survive. Made me believe that taking risks could lead to something beautiful. He kissed her forehead. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we start planning the rollout. Tomorrow we change the world. Together. She drove away, but this time Ryan knew it wasn't goodbye. Just good night, because in a few days she'd be back with suitcases and books and all the pieces of her life, fitting them into the spaces in his house and his heart that had been empty for so long. The following weeks were a beautiful chaos of Isabella moving in, of Liam teaching her to play video games, of Ryan teaching her to cook simple meals that didn't end in smoke alarms. They were building a life together, messy and imperfect and absolutely real. Phoenix Technology Inc. officially launched in September, almost a year after Ryan had pulled Isabella from that fire. The response was overwhelming. Home builders wanted the system installed in new construction.